Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, we've got a very special catch-up edition. We are trying to get up to speed on the Proud Boys trial. We have 2 days to attend to, day 47 and day 48. We're going to start with day 47. Day 48 is happening right now in real time. And so we'll get caught up with it, hopefully, as the day evolves. But remember, we are talking about a couple different Proud Boys. We've got a number of co-defendants in this case. On day 47, Carmen Hernandez is the defense attorney representing Zachary Rehl. We're going to hear a lot from her. And then on day 48, which I said is happening right now, there was a lot of argument about Ray Epps and about other people and whether the defense was going to be able to call them in to testify in this trial. And so we are going to go through it in detail. We'll just get started right now with Roger Parloff catching us up on day 47. Judge Kelly is on the bench. He says, all right, everybody, we've got two issues before we get started that we got to get teed up here. He said, I've been thinking a lot about this over the night. And so I woke up this morning and I thought, on one of these issues, I'm going to side with the defense. On another one of these issues, I'm going to side with the government, which is like, wow, you're kidding me. The defense wins something here? Amazing. That's crazy. Now he says, the prosecutor chimes up and he's ready to go this morning. He says, Your Honor, why should Miss Hernandez, Carmen, we just heard from her, why should she be allowed to introduce those photos? He's throwing a fit. He says, Judge, the inferential values of those photos are low. It's a photo of Rehl's grandfather, okay? They're trying to show pictures of his grandpa. It was taken before he was born and when he was very young. And she wants to argue that Carmen says, well, this is to show that he's just a regular guy. He's not going to do anything against the police. And the prosecutor says, well, it would stoke the jurors' emotions. It would rile them up. And the judge says, well, I think it's fair testimony. And these accompanying photos are the backstory. And so he says, I do agree that it is low probative value. We're not going to get much out of it, but says, if it's a photo, if this is your grandfather and this is your father, I think it's fair, says the judge. That's the one where they agree with the defense. Great. So we get a photo coming in. Nice job. The judge is like, don't say I didn't give you anything. I did give you a photo of your grandfather. All the other conversations about confidential human sources, about deleted evidence, about changing reports, about confidential human sources, and so on and so forth, all of that is in favor of the government. But a photo about your grandpappy, that comes in. Great. So he says, that's the one where I agree with the defense. They flip it over to the other side. And apparently, Hernandez wants to introduce testimony of somebody called Jeff Finley, who I think stopped by the channel yesterday. Jeff Finley is going to come in and talk about his guilty plea agreement, a plea deal that he took. And Carmen Hernandez wants to get this introduced to show the jurors that the government is charging these people with low crimes, right? These aren't crimes of the centuries. And she says, he took a guilty plea. Jeff Finley took a guilty plea. And so why can't we just introduce that to show that even the government is allowing a reduction of charges, right? They don't even think this was the crime of the century. They allowed him to plead to a lower charge, and they didn't even charge him with serious stuff in the first place. The judge says, well, I don't want to permit that because it might go to the prosecutor's charging decisions on this thing. And the defense says, Carmen says, Your Honor, if the government wanted that kept out, if they didn't want me to use this guilty plea, they should have voiced that objection a lot earlier, okay? I stayed up all night preparing my examination. I was assuming that I'd be able to argue about this, says Carmen. And I also want to be able to talk about other things. I want to be able to rebut the tools theory. They said that he came in with all sorts of tools to take over and steal the country. She says, my client didn't even bring a fighting force. There was no weapons. He was not violent. I want to talk about his other Proud Boys plea deal, which showed that they were also pretty insignificant charges for him as well. Judge Kelly says, all right, hey, Carmen, take it easy, okay? I have no quarrel with you introducing all the facts about what he did and didn't do on that day. Now, I presume the government has no intention of arguing that he's lying because of something to do with his plea deal. Roger gives us some background based on what he's seeing. He says, yeah, ordinarily defendants are able to introduce guilty pleas because it can shade the witness testimony. But in this case, it's the defense calling the witness. So they're saying you can't impeach your own witness by bringing in evidence of the plea deal. Because most of these people are actually kind of government witnesses. I mean, I know Jeff Finley is a Proud Boy, and we're going to hear from him in a minute, but he entered a deal with the government. The current Proud Boys have not. And so they're still saying that they can't introduce that evidence of the government's deal because it's the defense witness, even though the evidence of the government's deal would show that the government, even in their deal, didn't think it was the crime of the century. And Finley was able to plead to that. So Carmen is still in court, and she says, Your Honor, my client, Mr. Rehl, and his witness is living proof that Rehl didn't bring a fighting force. They're saying they didn't even charge Finley with serious crimes. It's not that he just pled down to something lower. They didn't even charge him. Now, and he's also a Proud Boy in a number of different chats. She says, he entered the Capitol with my client. And so if this guy is basically attached at the hip with my client, and they're charging my client with crimes of the century, I should be able to show why there's a compare and contrast with Finley. If his conduct was very similar to my client's conduct, why is there a mismatch of the charges? She says, I'm entitled to bring one small little piece of information in here, Your Honor, to bolster my client's credibility. And the judge said, well, hold on a minute. It says, I haven't permitted charging information with respect to any tool. So I haven't allowed that to come in before. And Carmen says, Your Honor, the decision to let him take this guilty plea, this conduct that you did in conjunction with my client, it does not amount to a violent case. My client is not violent. The judge says, well, Carmen, the way you crystallize it here reflects why it shouldn't be admitted. A decision by the government to charge someone with X doesn't mean they didn't commit a greater offense. Saying just because they didn't charge him with something more doesn't mean he didn't do something more. So you can't use that as evidence to show that he didn't do something more, is what the judge says. The government's assessment of what they decide to charge them with and then later allow them to plead to has just no relevance here. And she says, Your Honor, it does. It's the smearing of my client. Not a single instance of violence has been brought out in this trial, yet they bring in all this text evidence from people who aren't him. And the judge says, I've heard you, Carmen. Okay, I've heard you. All right, just stop talking. I've already heard you on this. And she says, well, I'm objecting, Your Honor. I'm going to object to the government presenting these violent videos to the jury. They've already seen these videos, and we've been critical about this here. They play it over and over and over. It's like this endless loop because they know it's persuasive. It may not even have the Proud Boys in the videos, but it's just the videos of the violence. And even if they're very zoomed out, you can see the whole crowd. And the jurors are just going to conflate them with each other, regardless of whether the Proud Boys had any actual criminality in those particular videos singularly. It says, we've already seen these, Your Honor, and I'm going to object to this because 403 and it's cumulative, and we've seen this many times. The judge says, well, hold on a minute. I know you're objecting now, but we'll police that to the extent we get into it when we get into 403 land. So Carmen says, okay, fine. She's agitated as can be, rightfully so. Defense attorney for Biggs, you know him as Norm Pattis. He says, Your Honor, I think it's probably about time. The judge says, anything else from anybody else here before we get started? Norm says, yeah, Your Honor, I think it might be a good idea for us to put something on the calendar so we can get our jury instructions wrapped up. Judge is like, what? Jury instructions? We just started the defense case. Norm says, well, we might be doing closings as early as next week sometime. What? We've got 5 co-defendants and they're going to be done next week? Judge says, really? He says, yeah, I foresee the defense resting on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday at the latest. He says, "Now, I don't know if the government has a rebuttal here." Says, "Closings are probably going to take 2 days from my perspective." Says, "Everyone's going to need to be heard. So I'm thinking," says Norm, "that we begin either maybe Thursday and then we can complete this by the end of the week, next week. Closings done by next week, handed off to the jury." What? Says, "I don't even know if we can get through 6 closings and the charge in 2 days because every single defendant's going to have their own closing arguments." The judge says, "Okay, well, all right." They're looking at their calendar. They're pulling it up here. They drag it open. They're like, "All right, so next week we've got third, fourth." He says, "Okay, by the way, we're taking off the 7th for Good Friday, and we're taking off the day after that for Easter." He says, "Our court is traditionally a recess around those days." All right, so next week's going to be tough anyways because we'll have the 7th on the Friday. So they're picking this up. Prosecutor says, "Well, it's challenging." He says, "What do you say, prosecutor? You have any opinion on the calendar?" "Yeah, gosh, Your Honor, it's challenging to predict where we'll be. We don't know what the defense will do tomorrow. And so in terms of our rebuttal case, it's still unclear to us what not only the entire defense case looks like, but even tomorrow's defense case, if we can. So if we can carve out time early next week for the charge conference, then that'll benefit all of us." And the judge says, "Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, maybe even sometime early next week we can do the charging conference." Judge says, "I'm blocking off this weekend to prepare. I'll give you my first cut at this and to bracket where we can focus our attention." Prosecutor says, "I think that would be hugely helpful, Judge. Thank you. My anticipation is that you'll want to take a day or two after hearing argument, so it's best to do it early." This prosecutor's giving this judge advice, which is just perfect for the judge's probably. "Thank you. That's great. Great suggestion, Mr. Prosecutor. I'll definitely take that under advisement." Anything else? Anybody? Everybody says, "No, we're ready to go." Okay, we're ready to go. Bring in the jury, please. Now, the day prior, we talked about one of these text messages that came from a Proud Boy testifying under a pseudonym called Aaron. And this was the text message that Aaron sent to his FBI handler. And there was some discrepancy about the time. Remember, Aaron was saying he sent it immediately. He said, "No, I sent it right away." And they said, "Well, we didn't get it until pretty late." And so they said that getting it late was indicative that Aaron was just trying to make up a cover story. After all this went down, they're saying that he was trying to sort of uh, cover for himself, really. And he sent it late. But Aaron said, "No, I didn't. I sent it right then and there. And when I sent it, it was because all of the cell towers were overloaded. That's why nobody got it." So this is the actual message that he sent. It says, "Proud Boys did not do it, nor inspire it. The crowd did as a herd mentality, not organized." That was at 12:02 p.m. on January 6th, the day of. Obviously, that's true. I mean, we all saw it. But they're talking about this like this was an organized insurrection because they're whack jobs. Now, this is a redacted portion of this text message, as you can see. Don't know what the FBI handler said. They're not telling us that part of it. Somebody else said barriers were down at the Capitol building. Crowd surged forward almost to the building now. And we have another redacted text message from the FBI handlers. Now, wouldn't it be appropriate, you think? I mean, like if this was your son on trial, that you'd get to see what all of the FBI informants were saying? I'm sorry, what the FBI handlers were saying to their informants? Were they encouraging this type of behavior? Wouldn't it be nice to know what they were doing? Almost to the building now. What did he say right there? We don't know. So Hernandez is now done, or now calling our second witness. Carmen Hernandez, of course, is the defense attorney for the Proud Boy Zachary Rehl. And so this is her calling his wife. Your Honor, the defense calls Amanda Rehl. She takes the stand. "Hi, Amanda. Thanks for being here today. Can you tell me how you know my client, Mr. Rehl?" "Yeah, I'm married to Zachary Rehl." "How long you been married?" "However many years." "And where were you born, Amanda?" "I was born in Philadelphia." I attended a school called the Archbishop Ryan School. And then I went to college at a place called Community College Philadelphia, graduated there with an associate's degree in business. And what do you do now? Now I'm a stay-at-home mom to our child. Wow, that's nice. What's your child's name? Her name's Leanna. They put a picture on the screen. Roger says, adorable blonde daughter, maybe 3-ish. Zachary Rehl has not been able to spend any time with her because he has been in custody for a nonviolent crime inside the Capitol, which other people were also inside the Capitol, called Ray Epps inside the Capitol, and he was not arrested, even though he was on the FBI's most wanted list. I'm sure he's got grandchildren. I'm wondering if he's spending time with them. Amanda, when did you meet Zach? Well, we met in about 2009. What was going on in your life around that time? He was in the Marine Corps out in Yuma, Arizona. Shout out. I was living in Philadelphia. He had another child from a previous relationship. That child is about 18 years old now. And he was in the Marine Corps. Yeah, he was honorably discharged in 2012. What happened after that? He moved to Shippensburg in Pennsylvania, where I was working. And how long was he there? Well, he was there until about 2013. Then Zach went back to Philly. He went to school at a place called Temple University, graduated there with a bachelor's degree, got his master's 2018, paid for all of that with the GI Bill. Yeah, it was pretty neat. He was the first person in his family to graduate college. And Amanda, tell me about you. Tell me about your family. She said, well, I kind of am from a police family. I have 3 police officer uncles. And in fact, Zach's father and his grandfather were also Philly police officers. Amazing. They're saying these guys were out going and trying to murder the police. Yeah. So they now show a photo of Rehl's father. He's standing there in a police uniform, Zach and his brothers as kids. Now showing a photo of Zach's grandfather, also in police uniform, married 2018. A total police family. And Amanda has 3 police officer uncles too. So what happened after that? Well, they say that Zach wanted to open a financial business. Well, tell us more. They do and go into that. Now, I want to fast forward, Amanda. Can you tell me about what happened on January 6th? She said, sure, yeah. Yeah, on January 6th, I had some of the Philadelphia Proud Boys over to our home. On January 6th, Zach went over to Washington, D.C. Amanda says, I didn't. How did he get there? He drove over there. He went with somebody called Isaiah Giddings, Freedom Vi, and Brian. Those were all different Proud Boys from Philly. Carmen says, Miss Rehl, now I don't have many more questions, and I know you look very scared, but I just have to continue on a little bit further. Now, I want to show you this image and this video on the screen. It's a film of a breach at the Peace Circle. And you played this video here. Amanda, you're married to Zach, yeah? Yeah. Can you recognize any voices in this video that we're playing here today? She says, yeah. Any one of those voices, was that Zach? No. No, I'm listening again. Play it again. Do you hear Zach? No, I don't hear him. What did you hear, Amanda? I heard F them, storm the Capitol. I heard that too. But is Zach saying that? Did you hear that? No, it doesn't sound like that to me. Carmen says no further questions. We're done. Prosecutor says, my time for cross-examination. Ms. Rehl, we're going to keep this short here for you. Zach joined the Proud Boys in 2018. Is that true? Yeah. He's pretty invested in the group, you'd say? Yeah, I'd say so. He was even the president of the Philly chapter, wasn't he? Yeah. Kind of an important part of his identity, wasn't it? Yes. He organized rallies. Yeah. He traveled across the country. Yeah. He went to other Proud Boy rallies in multiple locations, didn't he? Yeah. Now, the defense attorney, Carmen, just played a video for you. You saw that, right? Yeah. You didn't hear Zach in there? No. But you weren't in DC then, were you? And there were a lot of voices on that video, weren't there? Yeah. And there were a lot of people chatting, weren't there? Yeah. And a lot of things can capture how the microphone picks up sound. Would you agree with that? She says, yeah. If I'm holding up a phone and recording something, you'd expect someone who's close to the phone to be picked up more easily than somebody who's far away from the phone, wouldn't you? Yes, I would. Now, I want to replay this video for you. Objection. We already played it. This is Rehl's own video. Sidebar. Judge says, well, they're playing it again because the judge loves to hear them play this over and over again. They say, what we've just heard, Amanda, you just heard chanting in there, right? Yeah. And you could clearly make out the words, F them, storm the Capitol. You heard that, right? Yeah. It sort of rises above the crowd noise, doesn't it? Yeah. Now, Mr. Rehl actually shot this video, didn't he? She says, yeah, that's what I was told. I think so. And the prosecutor says, well, now I want to show a different video on a different side of the plaza. Objection. Sidebar. Prosecutors allowed to play it. Prosecutor says, you see this right here? That's Mr. Rehl, isn't it? Amanda says, yes. Did we just hear Mr. Rehl say something, Amanda? Amanda says, I think I heard it. It's too late for that. Prosecutor says, too late for that, but F it. Isn't that what he said? She says, yes. Prosecutor says, great. Now I want to go back to an early video. You heard that voice on the one that I just played where he said, too late for that, but F it. Right? Yeah. And play this other video. Now, doesn't that sound like the same voice to you, Amanda? She says, no, it doesn't to me. No, it doesn't sound like the same voice. Prosecutor says, very interesting answer. Just a couple more questions, Amanda. You would not have wanted Mr. Rehl to go onto the Capitol grounds on January 6th. Is that right? Objection sustained. Just a couple more questions then. Amanda, you obviously love your husband, don't you? Yes. You don't want to see him convicted of anything, do you? No. No further questions. Trying to show that she's biased. You're just on this stand so your husband doesn't go to prison, aren't you? You don't want to see him convicted of anything, right, Amanda? No, I don't. Don't believe anything she says, jurors. No further questions. Amanda Rehl, wife of Zach Rehl, is now off the stand. Defense attorney Carmen Hernandez calls the third witness, the ninth for the defense. Your Honor, the defense calls Jeffrey Finley to the stand. Longer beard than this photograph below. Roger Parloff grabbed this one. Mr. Finley takes the stand. Says, Mr. Finley, can you tell me a little bit about your background? He says, sure, happy to. Yeah, I am here today. I'm 30 years old. I'm employed. You remember the Proud Boys? Yeah, I became a member in mid 2019. Started then in Maryland, and then we started a West Virginia chapter. And what was your involvement in West Virginia? So I was the president of the West Virginia chapter. And why did you become a Proud Boy? Finley says, well, I became a Proud Boy because I saw on the news that there were Trump supporters getting attacked all over the place. And I saw the Proud Boys standing between supporters and the attackers. And, that resonated with me. Interesting. And so you wanted to go and support other people who were being attacked. Yeah. Now, anything else interest you in the Proud Boys? He says, yeah, some of the political aspects got me interested as well. I mean, I like the politics, but the brotherhood is what really made me stay. I really connected with and sort of found a fellowship. Tell me about your background. Well, I went to the military academy. He said I was in the brotherhood. I found a brotherhood there. And that's kind of where I got familiar with that. Said the West Valley chapter had about 30 to 36 members or so, and that's where I met Zach Rehl. It was at a rally in Philadelphia. He was there. Our chapter was there. We hung out. We had pizza. Are you a member of the Proud Boys? No, not currently. Not currently a member of the Proud Boys. So I just joined back in 2018. No longer a member. Okay, I want to talk back about what happened on January 5th, January 6th. What happened? He says, well, we came to DC January 5th, got a hotel. Did you come alone? No, we came with all their Proud Boys from the West Virginia chapter. Says, I believe I saw Rehl at Harry's on January 5th, but I'm not real sure. What's Harry's? That's a bar near Washington. So let's go to January 6th. What happened then? Well, on January 6th, Finley says, I went to the Washington Monument. Were you in the Proud Boys Ministry of Self-Defense chat? He says, no, I wasn't in that one, but I was in the Boots on the Ground chat. Did you march with the Proud Boys on January 6th? He says, yeah. Did you bring any weapons? No. We did not use weapons. We did not attack anyone. We didn't destroy any property. And I honestly didn't see Rehl do any of those either. He said, and Rehl never told me that he did any of those things either. He said, on January 6th, I was wearing a suit and I had headphones on. I had a Trump hat on backwards. They play a video from the Washington Monument. There's a Confederate battle flag going by. We hear Eddie Block, shout out to Eddie and his good boy Donnie, who were also on camera or recording camera. Eddie Block's voice, he was the videographer there. Hernandez is trying to move the video forward. She's pacing forward in the video. Now we see a bunch of Proud Boys with orange tape. Aaron had testified yesterday in the video that the KC Proud Boys used that tape because they heard infiltration by Antifa and they didn't want to attack their own guys. Hernandez says, I got the wrong video. This is not the right video. So she's playing around. Give me the other USB. Come bring it up. Okay. Hernandez is showing a different video. The witness has a strikingly strong, clear voice. Shout out to Finley, enunciating like a man. Strikingly strong and clear. Testifying with some girth. We like that. He says, what were you doing there? Hernandez is the defense attorney. She asks, what were you doing there? She says, well, we were praying. That's what we were doing. She fast forward in the video. Is this by the food trucks? I don't remember exactly. Now, Hernandez is now admitting another segment, another video. We haven't seen the first one yet. Then another. Basically, we're seeing relatively anodyne marching is what Roger is playing for us. Finley comes in and out of the screen, right? It's just kind of just basic marching. They're walking around. This is what you guys were doing, insurrecting the Capitol grounds? Okay. And Finley comes in and out of the screen. And she's trying to, they're playing all of the horrific people attacking police on loop constantly. And so Carmen is coming out and just playing the rest of the other videos. Just it's other very bland, very boring, uninteresting video, which was most of the day and most of the people by a huge margin. She plays another segment. Finley, who are you next to here? He says, there I was next to defendant Joe Biggs, though I wasn't talking to him. Hernandez says, did Biggs tell you to storm the Capitol on January 6th? Did he tell you that? No. Did Nordine? No. Did Pizzola? No. Nobody told you to storm the Capitol? No. I want to show you another video. Another segment. Is this you here? He says, yeah, that's me. I'm helping Eddie Block take his scooter down the stairs. Nice guy. Who is Eddie Block? Finley says he's like a journalist guy. And this was taking place around 11:50 a.m. And Eddie Block was the videographer. And he testified a few days ago. Hernandez plays another video segment. She says, do you recognize where you are, Finley, in this video? He says, yeah, I think there were by the food trucks at that place. He says, I think that's over by the Department of Labor, I believe. Now they play another video. Biggs is leading the chants now. They're at the peace circle. Judge says, all right, everybody, we're going to take a 10-minute morning break here and go on a break. Don't talk about the case. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Ooh, we fast forward. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Carmen Hernandez resumes the cross-examination. Jeff Finley is on the stand. Now, the witness is in a black suit over a dark gray, maybe navy blue t-shirt, beard, glasses, very close shaven head, clear as a bell, radio quality voice. Shout out to Jeff. Roger says there's a sidebar that takes place. And defense attorney Hernandez says, all right, I'm not going to torture anybody else with my video clippings. Okay, we've got the point of it. The government is happy to torture you. We're not going to do that. Says, Mr. Finley, were you with the Proud Boys most of the day? Finley says, yeah. He says, yes, I was, in his outstanding radio voice. Sorry about the headphones users. Says, did there come a time when you left? He says, yes, things got chaotic. They were pepper spraying. There were pepper balls being thrown all over the place. And there was some bad conduct that you saw by the demonstrators. He says, yes. But you didn't throw any projectiles at the police, did you? No. And Rehl didn't, my client either? Correct. And neither did Biggs or Nordine or Pizzola. None of them threw anything, right? Correct. Now, you went outside the Capitol building and you were standing right next to Rehl, weren't you? Yes. Now, I want to play this video for you. Finley's in a gator now in the Upper West Terrace. He says, what do you see in this video? He says, well, there I see myself. I see Zach Rehl. He said, I was trying to regroup with people I knew were other Proud Boys. And in the video, it's playing, whose house? Our house. Whose house? Our house. We've already heard that. Hernandez says, did you hear what they were saying? Finley says, I think that they said Pence just got evacuated. Did that change anything for you, Finley? I don't recall hearing that when I was there. Did you hear anybody in this video say, you want to go in? Finley's listening intently. He says, I can't. A lot of noise. Do you know this gentleman? No, I just know he's a Proud Boy. Do you recognize any other people in that group? Just as Proud Boys. So you don't know their first or last names? No. They play a different CCTV video. That's Zach, he says, entering the video, which is a co-defendant, Zach Rehl. And who's the person behind him? I don't know. I just know he's a Proud Boy. Is he from Philly? Maybe. He says, oh, there I am. That's me behind the flag, maybe 10 feet behind Rehl. The lobby is packed now. People are walking in. Hernandez says, well, Finley, will you tell us about the mask you're wearing? You have a mask on now. You didn't have one earlier, but you have one on now. He says, oh, the skull mask? It's just a skull mask. He says, they're pretty cool, which is true. They are pretty cool. And they help with COVID, which is what the answer always is. COVID. Yeah, COVID. We're protecting myself from COVID, obviously. Jurors like, oh, yeah, that's a great point. Got to be safe out there. DC jurors. That's not what he said. I added all that in. The skull mask, it's just a skull mask. Okay, they're pretty cool, which is true. So it took a couple minutes to get inside. Is that right, Zach? This is Finley. Yes, it wasn't fast entry. It was pretty slow. When you were walking in, did any police officers stop you and ask you to not come in? He says, no. No, I don't recall any of them. Officer asking us to not come in. And we've played videos here of officers basically letting people in. We played the video of the officer getting the old tap on the shoulder. People were waiting patiently outside. Officer gets a tap on the shoulder. They all stand down. The crowd comes pouring in. They charge them all with crimes. Zero violence in those clips. Originally, Finley says, originally, why were you in there? Gosh, I got caught up with being a part of history, I think. I just got caught up with the mob mentality of it all, he says. Which is understandable, right? This is something that happens to people. And the standard should be equal across the board. If Ray Epps doesn't get charged with something like this, why are other people getting charged? If the BLM Summer of Love protest are people getting caught up in a mob mentality and they're excused with probation and diversion offers, why isn't that same standard being applied here? We understand people get caught up. We understand that. And I want the equal standard of justice to apply to everybody, but it's not. It's only being applied harshly to the J6ers. So you got caught up with the mob mentality of it, right? Yeah. Did you do it to stop the legislators from counting the votes, like to insurrect the country? No. Did you ever discuss with Zach Rehl, my client, stopping the legislators? No, I did not. And you were a member of the Proud Boys since 2018. Is that true? 2019 till the middle of last year. And did you go to rallies? Yeah, I went to several of them. I went to a Philly rally. Says I didn't see Rehl use violence at that one either. Not at all. After these rallies and after January 6th, Finley, did you send any text messages on January 6th? He says, well, on Telegram. Yeah. He says, I was on Telegram and says, if you leave, you're not getting back in. I guess if you leave the chat. And maybe this is on Telegram. He says, if you leave, you're not getting back in. And he said something, and proud of your boy. We don't really know what's going on here. It looks like there's a kind of a question in the transcript. Hernandez says, you were congratulating him? Rogers question marks. What are we talking about here? We get back on track. Hernandez says, Mr. Finley, so today, as of today, it's true, you regret having entered the Capitol, don't you? Yes. Why? He says, well, repercussions aside, I mean, I pleaded guilty to a crime. I'm sitting here in court testifying. That aside, I don't think it was a productive way to make my voice heard. Doxing, I got banned from bank accounts, banned from apps, losing family. He says, originally, I believe there were some voter issues going on. And then towards J6, I just wanted the voter base heard. If they think there's impropriety, they should be heard and accounted for. I wasn't necessarily saying there were any major problems. I just wanted to be heard. So you've always, Jeff, kind of been interested in politics. Is that true? He says, yeah. In fact, you even wanted to become a politician. Is that true? Maybe politics or the law? He says, yeah. He says, yeah, actually, I wanted to. Yeah, maybe politics or the law. Hernandez says, well, there's still a chance. You can still do that. Finley says, I don't know. January 6th and the Proud Boys label, it's probably going to taint my chances of reaching anywhere substantive for politics. I don't know about that, Jeff. Hang tight, buddy. Hang tight. The more truth that is revealed about this ridiculousness, you might have an amazing chance. Just hang tight. Hernandez says that will be a loss. You were in the Capitol for a short period of time, weren't you, Finley? He says, yeah, less than 10 minutes. Did you see Rehl again that day after you left? He says, no, I didn't. Hernandez is now done. No further questions. Now we have another defense attorney for Enrique Tarrio come to the podium. Says it's my time. For Roger Parloff, he continues on giving us an update. Sabino Jaraguay takes the podium on direct exam for Finley. He says, do you know my client Enrique Tarrio? Finley says, yeah, I do. I met him a couple times at a couple rallies. Do you know, did he ever cooperate with law enforcement? He said, yeah, he does. Always wants to make sure that we're safe. Finley, did you receive any instructions from Enrique about what to do on January 6th? He says, no. And do you accept your responsibility for trespassing in the Capitol? Yes. Did you lose civil rights as a result of going into the Capitol? Objection sustained. Did Enrique think it was a good... This is going into what his plea deal is, right? Did you lose civil rights? He's trying to get into his plea deal. If his plea deal had him plead guilty to a felony, he would have lost civil rights. If they were pled down to a misdemeanor, maybe he didn't. But the answer to that question will open the door about what his plea deal looked like. And so prosecutor objects, sustained. Did Enrique think it was a good idea to go inside to the Capitol? Sidebar. They come back. Finley, you've interacted with Tario in the past, haven't you? Yeah. And you know what his feelings are on certain topics, don't you? Well, it says it depends on the topic. Now, at rallies, one of the main reasons you went to rallies was to be seen, right? Sort of this idea of having a presence. Is that true? Nadia Moore objects, prosecutor's table. Objection, she's overruled. Did Tario like to interact with the media? Finley says, well, he was a spokesperson, so yes, I think so. Would it have been Tario's desire for the Capitol to be stormed? Did he want to do that? Objection, calls for speculation, sustained. Do you know what his opinion would be on objection, sustained, but he got out? I think he'd oppose, and then it's sustained. Do you know what his feeling would be about invading the Capitol? He says, I do not. I was not in comms with him during that time. Cross-examination starts by Nadia Moore from the prosecutor's table. She goes up to Finley and says, all right, Finley, now you're not a Proud Boy anymore, right? I'm not. And on January 6th, a Proud Boy was an important part of your life. Is that true? He says, sure. You went to meetings, right? Yeah. You went to rallies with the Proud Boys, didn't you? Yeah. You went into the chats. Yeah. And you, in some of those chats, you were even pretty active, weren't you? Yeah. So you spent a fair amount of time interacting with other Proud Boys. Is that fair? Yeah. And you cared a lot about other members, didn't you? Yeah. Almost viewed them as brothers? Yeah. Now there's 4 degrees within this Proud Boys organization. Is that true? Yeah. And you were the 4th degree? Yeah. You were the president of the West Valley chapter, weren't you? Yes. And you've got a West Valley Proud Boy tattooed across your chest. Yeah. But you weren't a national leader, were you? No. You weren't in the MOSD chats, were you? No. What chat were you in? Well, I was in the boots on the ground chat. And you understand, don't you, Finley, that on the afternoon of January 5th, that Biggs and Nordine were meeting together. You knew that, right? No. Oh, you didn't know that? Well, let me pull this up on the screen for you. Probably a telegram message. Looks like this. She's going to hit him over the head with this. You don't know about this? Oh, yes, you do. Is El Jefe you? She says. She puts it up on the screen. He says, yeah. So you said, I let Rufio know I was here, but you did not know who Rufio was meeting later that night? You said this message, I let Rufio know who I was here, but you didn't know where he was going? He says, no, I didn't know. So on January 6th, Finley, you understood that the Proud Boys held animosity toward the police, didn't you? Sidebar. Prosecutor comes back. On J6, you held animosity towards the police, didn't you? No. No, I didn't. Well, I'm going to show you this text message that you sent. On the screen, it says, I'm just going to redact it in a suit today. Hope to see you all soon. POYB and F the blue is what the message says. Prosecutor Nadia Moore says, F the blue? What is this? Is that a reference to the police? He says, yeah. Nadia says, so you met with the Proud Boys that morning and you didn't wear colors because national leadership told you not to, right? He says, no, it was my decision to wear a suit, like to look good. But you didn't wear colors because leadership didn't want you to, right? He says, sure. Moore puts up another exhibit. Looks like Finley's out at the Washington Monument. Moore says, so you marched with the Proud Boys, yeah, and the Proud Boys didn't attend the Trump speech, right? And you were the person, you were not deciding where we were going here, were you? And Rufio was leading the march, wasn't he? He says, I think so. I think so. Says, would looking at your statement of offense refresh your recollection? If you can't remember this, I'll pull up the documents for you. He says, sure, I'll take a look at it. Prosecutor Moore shows him what he admitted to as part of his guilty plea, which is the statement of the offense. We've read through many of those examples here. Finley says, okay, I read that. Yes, you're right. It was Rufio leading the march. Prosecutor says, so during that march, we have Nordine, we have Biggs, we have Donahoe, and they would meet in a small group from time to time. Is that true? Multiple defense lawyers ask for a sidebar. They all jump up. They hear these names. They hear Donahoe. They hear other names. They're triggered. They go, uh-oh, sidebar. So they talk about something. Prosecutor comes back and says, so during the march, you would actually talk to these other people. Finley says, I'm not actually privy to those conversations. I don't know anything about them. These people apparently directed people to the Peace Circle, and there were U.S. Capitol Police at the barricades. Moore says, all right, Finley, and you from here you could see clearly that this is a restricted area at that point, right? He says, yeah. And Biggs at this restricted area started riling people up, didn't he? Finley says, no, no, we chant all the time. Yeah, but Biggs was saying, whose capital? Our capital. Whose house? Our house. Did you hear him saying that? Yes. They play the video again. Carmen Hernandez says, Your Honor, can we have a sidebar, please? Prosecutor continues with the question. Now, in this video, this was the chanting that you had mentioned, kind of the things you observed, right? Yeah. And you're also yelling there about something with the election. Hernandez, objection, overruled. Moore carries on. She says, Finley, now at some point in this case, you were interviewed by the FBI. Is that true? Yeah. And during the interview, did you tell, sidebar, they come back and they move on. Moore continues, says, all right, Finley, after the peace circle, rioters just pushed through the barricades. You would agree? Yes. And there were Proud Boys that were amongst those pushing through, weren't there? And you looked at Nordine at that point when they were pushing through? He says, I don't recall. Would looking at your statement refresh your recollection? So they're going to keep doing this game. Brings him back. Does that refresh your recollection about who you looked to after the barricades went down? Objection, asked and answered, overruled. Who did you look to? I assumed I looked at Ethan. So do you see what they did? When they had him plead guilty, they put in the statement of the offense that he looked to somebody else as a leader. He was subordinate to Ethan. And it's very careful language in the statement of the offense, right? It's probably he looked to Ethan and didn't even think anything of it. But they're using this to establish a hierarchy, to say that he was literally taking directions from the leader, Ethan Nordine. And we've heard from others. I think Eddie Block told us that, they'd had a difficult time ordering dinner together as a group order, which is complicated, by the way. And it is asinine to think that they were orchestrating an insurrection, but they need these little relationships to show that there was a connection. So in his statement of the offense, they dig out this probably very obscure language. You looked to Ethan Nordine? Oh, okay. So you were taking orders from him. He says, I assumed I looked at Ethan. He says, am I looking at him as a leader or just looking at someone? Right? Very ambiguous. He says, I did not look to Rufio as a commander, if that's where you're going with this. Look to? Prosecutor was trying to mangle that. Like I looked at or looked over to, I looked over at Ethan, I looked to Ethan, I'm looking, what's going on here? Oh, you're taking orders for your insurrection commander. Prosecutor says, did you look and see him at that point? He says, I assume I did. And so you moved closer to Rufio at that point. He says, possibly. Is this you? And is this Nordine? He says, yeah. And did we just see you moving closer to him in this video? He says, yes. Did we see Nordine continuing to advance towards the Capitol? Yeah. And you're following Nordine, aren't you? Yeah. Now, you knew that this was clearly illegal at this moment. Hernandez objects. Your Honor, this is beyond the scope. We never asked anything about this in the direct. Judge says, overruled, Carmen. I've already explained this. Prosecutor continues on because they get whatever they want. Says, did any other Proud Boys move the barricades aside as they walked down the walkway? Finley says, I don't recall. Shows him something else. Does this refresh your recollection? He says members of a crowd that had Proud Boys in it. There's a bunch of people with some Proud Boys in it. Prosecutor asks, did you stay at the Capitol ground for hours? Finley says, I'm not sure. A long time? Sure. Moore says, there were other rioters there at the Capitol who were assaulting police. Is that true? Yeah. And they were throwing items? Yeah. Did you tell the FBI, or he said, did you not tell the FBI that you saw a rioter mace the police? Objection sustained. Prosecutor says, you were there and there were people that overran the police. Is that true? And you met up with Zach Rehl after this and you celebrated? You posed for a celebratory photo, didn't you? He says, yes and yes. Are the other men in the photo also Proud Boys? He says, I believe so. But you weren't done for the day, were you? She says, correct. Here's the photo. Moore elicits that he and Zach went into a building. So, Finley, you and Zach went into the Capitol building, right? He says, yeah. Was it Zach's idea? He says, well, we talked about it. He says, I was also a part of that discussion. Prosecutor says, did Zach ask, quote, you want to go in? Defense objection overruled. Finley says, I believe so, I guess. I think he said you want to go in. And after that, you went in, right? Yeah. And you understood the police didn't want you in there. Is that true? I believe so. Now, at that point, you didn't believe there were any problems with the election, right? Right. And now I want to show you another video of you. Looks like this is you entering through the Senate wing door. In this video, you walk into an office, and it looks like Zach is taking photos in the office in the video. Prosecutor says, so that video that Zach took, did he send that into one of your chats called Boots on the Ground? Moore wants to move that into an exhibit. Carmen Hernandez objects. Your Honor, we didn't talk about any of this on the direct exam. This is all outside the scope. The judge says, no, it's your witness. You started talking about it, so they can talk about it too. Let's it in. Moore is now about to show the video on the J6. In the video, it says, shout out to Captain Trump. Just took photos in the building. If you leave, you can't get back in because there's crazy lockdowns, is what the video says. Prosecutor Moore says, now, after January 6th, Finley, you started destroying evidence. Is this true? Carmen Hernandez objects. Your Honor, objection. This is beyond the scope. Sidebar. They're having a conversation, and the judge says, all right, this is a good time for lunch, everybody. We're going to take a break here. Don't talk about the case. Be nice to your fellow jurors. We'll see you back here in a couple of hours. So the judge is out. They all take a break. The attorneys stay. The judge says, all right, let's stick a pin in these little issues that Ms. Hernandez has raised that might be the subject of redaction. And I want to give you the opportunity to see if you agree. The judge is talking to all the prosecutors in the room. Defense attorney Jerigwai says, Your Honor, I briefly looked at these messages. Hernandez is talking about, apparently there's going to be some submissions. She doesn't want them submitted. If they are coming in, they're talking about redactions. Defense attorney for Enrique Tarrio says, I briefly looked at these. It sort of looks like a podcast, and all the podcast is hearsay. Prosecutor says, it's not hearsay, Your Honor. There's two clips from a live streamed interview that he gave denying the Proud Boys were in the Capitol. It goes to his bias. Jerigwai says, Your Honor, the podcaster is making statements. The podcaster says the reason you went in is that his leader told him to go in. Carmen Hernandez says, Your Honor, this is after the event. There's no obligation to tell the truth in an interview. He can say whatever he wants in the interview. Plus, the government already gave him a plea agreement. Now, I think I get to bring that in. If they're going to talk about this, I get to bring in the plea agreement. Carmen Hernandez is fired up. She says, this theatrics they're doing in front of the jury is not appropriate. The reality is they're accepting it. They gave him a plea deal to a misdemeanor. They did not enhance the sentence for lying to them. Judge says, I don't care. I still think it's inadmissible for the reasons I already told you, Carmen. She says, Your Honor, his statement of the offense and his FBI interview were coercive situations given their connection to his plea. He took a plea deal to get a benefit and not make things worse. And if he didn't take the plea deal, it's very likely that they were threatening to make things worse because that's what always happens. That's why people take a plea. It's because they're going to get some benefit out of it that they don't get. They get a trial tax and they remain in custody. Defense attorney Nordine chimes in and says, Now, Your Honor, now I want to do a redirect in light of new information that came out on cross. You allowed them to go outside the scope of our direct. They introduced new evidence and ventured into new tentacles of inquiry. And now I want to do a redirect and talk about those things that they brought up because you allowed them to go into it. And Judge Kelly says, Yeah, okay, I guess that's true. I allowed it. So you are entitled to do that. And the prosecutor says, Judge, hold on a minute, Judge. The plea agreement requires Finley to be truthful, both in his statement of the offense and in the statements to the FBI. And Finley was, quote, was enhanced in his sentencing guidelines for obstruction and destroying evidence. Judge says, oh, gosh, you guys are giving me a headache. I'm going to think about this over lunch. McCullough comes in and says, Mr. Finley's statement of the offense was made during an interview with the FBI done mid-2021, well before his pre-sentencing process, or over a barrel is not accurate. It's not coercive. Okay. Yeah, okay. This is what the government says. Nothing they do is coercive. The whole nature of everything they do is coercive. They're the government. That's the only way they get anything done is by coercing you to do it. Finley gave a voluntary debrief in mid-2021, which was much later the basis for the statement of the offense. Hernandez is still going. She says, Your Honor, Miss Moore also tried to refresh with post-plea 302. And she says, that's incorrect, says Nadia. No, I didn't do that. Judge says, all right, I'm hungry, I said. I'm hungry, man. Let's take a break and come back at 1:45. I need a sandwich, is what the judge says. Now, we have more to attend to. Trial still going on. We'll continue on. We'll fast forward through lunch. This was an exhibit from yesterday, and we'll fast forward through these. The judge is back on the bench, and they're not coming back until 2 p.m. Man, he really needed a long lunch, maybe a little siesta too. Judge Kelly's back on the bench finally. Gosh, finally. Hope it was worth it. Says, all right, Nadia Moore, we're coming back in session. Before we bring the jury in, I want to know what exhibits you plan to use with your continuing cross-examination of Mr. Finley. She says, sure, Your Honor. She's listing them. She's just going through them one after the other. Judge says, okay, you know what? I'm going to end up excluding a lot of this. But the first one is fair. The next one, the photos, that's also fair. But the next three are the same topic. One of those is cumulative, but the other two are okay if you redact one word. So the judge says he's going to exclude a lot of it, but then allows everything in, as long as you redact the one word. There's a phrase in there, says Nick, says, I told that gimp N-word. Uh-oh. Okay, judge is deleting the N-word. I know. So the judge says, I'm going to get rid of the N-word, but I'm going to leave the word gimp in there. Are you deleting gimp? Judge says, no, I'm allowing gimp, but not the N-word. Defense attorney says, Judge, do you know what gimp means? Judge says, yeah, I do. And he says, well, I think that should be also removed. The judge says, no, it's not. I'm going to leave that one in. GIMP is allowed in, but the N-word is not. Okay. So Judge Kelly continues to go through the exhibits, most of which he said he was going to exclude, but then they're all coming in. All are actually now going to be allowed except one. It's such a joke. It's such a joke. The judge is even reversing himself midway through this. This is what he said in the transcripts. Nadia, sorry, I'm going to end up excluding a lot of this, so this is going to be painful for you. except I'm not going to do that. Actually, everything can come in. All are actually going to be allowed except one, which is just duplicative. So it's just a joke. Moore says, "Oh, that's fine. Perfect. Thank you, Judge." So I won't play it. I won't play that one twice. I'll just play it one time instead of twice. Thanks. So we'll stop one of her video exhibits before the portion that comes up. Hernandez is now making an all-out attack on this gentleman. She's fired up. Or she says this. Hernandez says, "They're making an all-out attack on this gentleman. Finley's in court. They're trying to destroy him. He doesn't have any obligation to tell the truth on a media outlet. There were a lot of repercussions from his involvement, including him being doxxed. He's protecting himself, not anyone else." She says, "They're not alleging that he lied to the FBI." The judge says, "I don't care. It still goes to his credibility, so I'm going to allow it in." Hernandez says, "Judge, I don't see how the government gets to attack mercilessly a witness who hasn't said anything untrue. There has to be some limits. Do we really need to cut down every witness in this manner?" So Carmen says, "I find it abhorrent. We had FBI agent Miller here. She was saying things that were really nasty and you kept it out." Prosecutor chimes in. "Your Honor, she's right." And Carmen keeps interrupting over and over and over. "Judge, I said that." And he's screaming and she's screaming. And now Judge Kelly loses his temper. And he's shouting at Hernandez, "Carmen, stop talking over there. Dang it. I told you 35 times. Sit back down." And she doesn't. She is just still screaming over here. And the prosecutor's. And then the prosecutor is saying now, "Judge, we're following the rules of evidence, okay? It's unfortunate, but if you redacted everything offensive they say, there'd be nothing left, okay? That's just how they talk." And says, "We don't apologize for doing the case the way we are. We're doing a great job. The suggestion," says the prosecutor, "that we're doing it in a slimy way is offensive." Says some of the most unethical, in my opinion, prosecutors we've ever seen out of DC. Hernandez is still arguing that she should be permitted to introduce evidence of Finley's plea agreement. "Judge, I should be allowed to talk about this." And judge says, "I'm not allowing you to talk about anything. Who is your next witness after Finley when he's done here?" She says, "I don't know, Judge. Depending on when we finish, I have two coming out. One is Mr. McGill and one is Mr. McGuffrey." And he says, "Fine. Then we're going to go into that one. Bring out the jury and sit down." Prosecutor is now back. Nadia Moore resumes the cross-examination of Jeff Finley. Moore says, "Okay, Finley, so is it true that you were deleting evidence after January 6th? He said, "Well, you know what? I didn't realize I was under investigation, all right? I deleted all photos of texts that I had of the investigation." She shows him a message from January 8th. Says, "Did you say this? Something like deleted all photos I may have had, advise my boys to as well. No one talks about DC on Telegram whatsoever, gathering numbers as we speak." Did you say that? Did you also say this one? Says, "None of my boys got. Thank Jeebus." Is that what you said, Finley? He says, that was a reference to none of them got shot. Okay. That was a reference to Ashley Babbitt, the other person that you guys shot and killed. Prosecutor says, "I want to show you another photograph from January 9th. This message says, the pics I have on my phone are few, but if I get clipped, I'll never say a dang thing, though I need someone to torch my computer." Did you delete that? He says. "Yeah. And did you also delete the Proud Boy Telegram chat?" He says. "You also deleted the Proud Boys Telegram chat about J6? "Yes, I did." Moore says, "When someone suggested making a DC insurrection, Proud Boys challenge coin, did you advise against that?" "I don't remember." Prosecutor is now showing messages from January 12th. Defense attorney Carmen Hernandez objects, wants a sidebar. The message on the chat says, "Did you know anybody, if any of the coins, if any DC coins are made, whether there was a DC Insurrection Day coin?" Says, "Having those coins would just place you in DC and give more ammo against you. So we didn't want those coins." Prosecutor says, "Now I want to turn your attention back over to Eddie Block. You were aware that he'd been filming on January 6th. Is that true?" He says, "I recall something to that effect." They put messages up on the screen on January 9th. On the screen, it says, didn't know Eddie gave vids to the media. Wow, redacted, saying people's names and such. Another message on January 23rd about Eddie Block said, I told that GIMP redacted to delete it in its entirety. The best part is he couldn't get anywhere near the Capitol, so he basically just has footage of guys marching. This is what the prosecutor is reading. Not horrible, but not great. Finley, what did you mean about all of that when you were saying those things? Says, I believe I left a comment on his YouTube channel. I don't think I spoke to him personally. And after January 6th, is it true you deleted your social media accounts? Yeah. But before you did, you gave an interview online, didn't you? Yes, I did. They play interviews from the podcast. Prosecutor says, on the podcast, it sounds like you said the word attack was just colorful language. Is that true? Yeah. And you said you wouldn't know anything about what happened on January 6th. Did you say that? Yeah. He says that, well, when I was on the interview, I wasn't talking with law enforcement, so I could say whatever I wanted. I wasn't under any obligation to tell the truth. But you also said that you didn't know any Proud Boys remotely close to being inside the Capitol. You said that, didn't you? Yeah. But you were a Proud Boy and you went inside the Capitol with Rehl and 3 others, didn't you? Yes. So Moore is basically saying, so therefore you are a liar. Moore's done. No further questions. Nick Smith for Ethan Nordine, defense attorney, comes back out and does a redirect to rehabilitate this witness, Finley. Mr. Finley, do you recall this moment video of the Peace Circle breach? Says, yeah. A prosecutor asked if you looked towards Nordine. You remember that question? Yeah. Draws a circle around him. You see Mr. Nordine raise his hand like that? What does that mean when he raises his hand like that? It means hold. It means don't move any further. You see someone else raising their hand? Says, yes, but I don't know who that is. Are you looking at Nordine right here in this? He says, well, he's turning around and he's giving the same hand signal. Was Ethan encouraging you to go into the Capitol? No, he was telling me to hold. Now, you said Nordine was the leader of the march. Was he leading you to commit crimes? No. So did anybody tell you to go into the Capitol? No. You went into the Capitol on your own volition. Is that true? Yeah. Nobody told you to do that, right? Yeah. Now I want to show you the statement of the offense. This is from your plea deal. Do you recognize this? Yes, I do. What? Hang on a second here. Got to get rid of this. Individual. Smith seems to want to elicit that this is a document in connection with the agreement. Judge Kelly has tried to keep this out. So Smith says, Nordine told you to stop. Is anything in your statement inconsistent with the stop request? Objection, sidebar. Defense attorney says, okay, Mr. Finley, did Nordine encourage you to enter the building? No. You looked to Nordine as a leader. You followed him to advance in the Capitol grounds. You never told the government that Nordine encouraged you into the Capitol, right? Finley says he was not encouraging me, and I didn't tell the government he was encouraging me. They show the video again. Does this breach look spontaneous or planned? He says, well, I did see a couple figures advance towards the barrier and dismantle it quickly, and it seemed like they'd planned it. Huh. Who was that? Smith is showing a video again. Smith is circling Rehl and Biggs. Biggs is facing away from the Capitol when Ryan Samsel and a second rioter approach the barrier. I did see a couple of figures advance towards the barrier and dismantle it. Were Ryan and Samsel and the other guy Proud Boys? No, I don't remember them being Proud Boys. Objection. Defense attorney says, Every says, when you were marching, did you ever hear anyone on the march say you should invade the Capitol? Finley says no. Based on your walk, did you understand the reason you were marching was to invade the Capitol? Absolutely not. The text of you saying you'd not say a damn thing if you were clipped, what was that? He says, well, that was just a blanket statement. Is the mere fact of entering the Capitol building to trespass, right? That's one thing. But did you have a conspiracy to enter? Was there a multiple people agreeing on this? No. He says no further questions. Norm Pattis now stands up. He's coming to do his exam. He says, Finley, I want to know what you meant when you said that Nordine and Biggs led the march. What did you mean by that? He says, well, Biggs said something like we're going to go stand outside the Capitol and make our voices heard. And how many more times did he say F Antifa and then whose house, our house? How many times did he say that? I remember saying F Antifa more than anything else for sure. I don't know how much I said it, but it is our main chat. Did Biggs direct you to do anything? No. Did you have any intention to enter the Capitol at that time? Not at that time. Did you have any intention to interfere with law enforcement? No. How about legislators? No. I want to show you this video. Now, you saw people advance very quickly on the barricade, right? Yeah, I did. Were they Proud Boys? No, they were not Proud Boys. It seemed as though they'd practiced, though, right? Yeah, he says it was very quick. Two people walked up and started shaking barricades very quickly. Hadn't seen them ever. Wonder who those people were. Wonder if they've been charged with crimes. Started shaking the barricades very quickly. Go up, instigate the whole thing, get out of there. Start firing off projectiles into the crowd, causing absolute chaos and pandemonium. Had never seen them before. Looked planned. Two people walked up, started shaking them very quickly. Even as you sit here today, you still don't know who they are? No, I still don't know. How many times have you talked to the government here? 2 times, and then for my own case? Did my client Biggs ever encourage you to storm the Capitol? Never. No further questions. Defense attorney Enrique Tarrio comes out for Enrique Tarrio, named Jaraguay, on redirect. He comes out hot. Mr. Finley, were you ever interviewed by lead FBI agent Nicholas Hanek? Objection! Sustained. Did you meet with lead prosecutor McCullough on July 7, 2021? Yes, I did. How long was that interview? I don't know. Would 2 hours sound about right? Yeah. You told the truth in that interview, right? Yeah. You made a formal written statement on March 8th, 2022, didn't you? Yeah. And you would tell the truth in a statement like that, right? Yeah. And you wouldn't lie, right? Yeah. And you're telling the truth today, right? Yeah. For example, you don't think that there were problems with the last election, right? Right. Does Enrique think the election was problematic? Objection, calls for speculation, sustained. What was the reason you were upset with Eddie Block over? I was concerned about being doxxed. He was filming everything and posting it on the internet. Defense attorney Jaraguay says, so why did you come to DC? To make our voices heard. Did you have a plan when you got here? No, no plan. Any understanding to attack the Capitol? No. No further questions. Carmen Hernandez is now back up and says, Mr. Finley, you're here today by subpoena. Is that true? Yeah. But you would have come here if we just asked you to come here, wouldn't you? He says, yeah. He says, the prosecutor showed messages here that made you look nasty and mean today. Is that who you are? No. You agree that those posts about Block were not nice? He says, yeah, they were not nice. Were you drunk? No, I was angry. Is that what they call internet rage? He says, possibly. Is that how you feel now? He says, no, but keeping up those videos gave people the opportunity to get doxxed, and he kept them up after many people asked him to take them down. And that's when people try to get your personal information out and they try to ruin your life. By asking questions today, I'm not able to reduce your sentence. Objection, sustained. I'm not able to give you any other benefit. Objection, sustained. You came here to have your voice heard. Is that true? Yeah. Now, you also participated in other rallies, right? Yeah. like an anti-abortion rally here in DC? Any other rallies? Objection, relevant, sustained. You were asked by Miss Moore if you accept responsibility for entering the Capitol. Remember that? Yeah. Was there a formal proceeding going on? Objection, sustained. Hernandez says, Miss Moore played a podcast video of you. Remember that? Yeah. Was that someone from your hometown interviewing you? He says, no, it was just an internet political guy. Says, I was not honest with him. All right. He's not like law enforcement or in court. I didn't feel like I had to tell him the truth. But that doesn't make you a liar? Objection, sustained. Hernandez starts to ask another question, but we have another sidebar. She comes back. Finley, you were asked about deleting messages, right? Yeah. That was a long time ago? Yeah. Just after January 6th? Yeah. Why'd you do that? He said, well, I wanted to eliminate the chance of doxing. I didn't want to get attacked by Antifa. You weren't concerned about incriminating yourself? He says, I wasn't aware that I was under investigation at that time. And as you left the Capitol, you didn't understand you may have committed a crime? Objection, overruled. He says, well, I understood that I may have. And you accepted responsibility for entering and remaining in the Capitol, talking about a plea deal. Objection, sustained. The judge is not allowing any talk about a plea deal. Not even close. Gives the jury a 10-minute break. This is a good time for a break here. And the jury leaves because Hernandez is getting into this. 10-minute break for the jurors. Defense attorney says, Your Honor, I want to ask him about this. The prosecutor Moore asked him, did you accept responsibility for his conduct? That may implicate him in something worse than he really accepted responsibility for. I feel like I'm entitled to ask him about what he accepted responsibility for. The judge says, yeah, but you're reading the statute. She says, well, that was Hernandez. Moore says, I never asked him if he accepted responsibility. I asked him if he did something illegal. Pattis says, I think Jeriguai asked that question. Hernandez says, yeah, but without any objection by the government. Nadia says, yeah, but Mr. Jeriguai cannot open the door for Ms. Hernandez to ask improper questions. Prosecutor McCullough says, therein lies the problem, Your Honor. There is an effort to backdoor things you've ruled to keep out, and it is improper. Hernandez says, what? Don't you accuse me, buddy. I do not backdoor stuff. I do respect the court's ruling. Very unprofessional of you to accuse another counsel like that. If Mr. Jeriguai did something wrong, it probably comes from his years as a prosecutor before becoming a defense lawyer. Oh, man. Oh, man. Carmen is so amazing. Gosh. She's like my spirit animal. If Mr. Jeriguai did something wrong, it's because he used to be a prosecutor and he's having to undo all of those bad habits before he became a defense lawyer and came over to the light side. Gosh. Oh, it's amazing. So the judge says, all right, so now judge says, you may have just doxed Mr. Jeriguai, which is hysterical. So she outed him as a prosecutor, a former prosecutor. Now everyone's taking a 10-minute break. They're all getting sick of each other in this courtroom. And I genuinely mean that. Here, witness Finley is back on the stand after the break. Hernandez resumes the redirect, playing a video of the peace circle, drawing attention to another man with a megaphone near the peace circle who wasn't a Proud Boy. Do you remember that guy with the megaphone? Says, I don't recall anyone specific, but I do know that there were others there. Hernandez says, on January 6th, Zach Rehl did not tell you to attack the Capitol, right? Police officers or destroy any property. My client didn't tell you to do any of that? Absolutely not. No further questions. Finley's done. Thank you for being here. And he is out. Tough exam on that one. That was a tough cross-examination. Carmen fought hard for that. We'll see how that lands. Now, Hernandez is going to call her fourth witness, defense attorney's 10th. Prosecutor objects, Your Honor, I object to this person, but it moves forward. Defense attorney Hernandez says, Your Honor, we call Anthony Joseph Gouffre. Name sounds familiar. He walks up. Do you promise to tell the truth? Yes, I do. Sir, can you tell me about yourself? How old are you? I'm 48 years old. And what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a medically retired U.S. Marine, not currently employed. I was recently a Marine all the way up until March 2017, served there for 3 years. I was a guard down at Guantanamo Bay for 6 months. And his name is Gouffre Anthony. Says, now, how do you know Zachary Rehl? Well, I know him through the Proud Boys. And on January 6th, were you a member of the Proud Boys? The screen is blurry. That's not good. We're pausing for a quick minute. Apparently, the screen is blurry. Somebody's telling me. Let me check something. Why is it blurry? Huh. Hopefully, it fixes sometime soon. It's good now? A little better? Hopefully, it clears up. Very, very blurry. It's clear now? Okay. All right. Somebody says it's better now. It's good now. All right. So we'll carry on. Obviously, we want it to be good. So here we go. We're back. Now we have this person, Anthony Gouffre, was a guard at Guantanamo Bay for 6 months. Knows Zachary Rehl through the Proud Boys. Says no longer a Proud Boy, but on January 6th was a Proud Boy, was in a chapter with New Jersey and Philadelphia when I began. Says was in the New Jersey chapter with Danny Mack. Danny Mack. Oh, Danny Mack. Was he a confidential human source? Asks Carmen Hernandez. Objection sustained. Now, you were a dual member of 2 different Proud Boys groups, one in Philly and one in New Jersey. Is that true? He says yes. And after Zach, my client, Rehl, was charged in this case, there was a leadership council until ultimately what happened next? He says, well, there was a leadership council after Zach was charged. He was a leader in another group. Ultimately, I became president of the Philadelphia chapter after Zach got charged. So backing up, on January 5th, can you tell me what you did? He says, yeah, I came to DC. How'd you get there? I drove. I stayed at the same hotel as Zach, and coincidentally, I was in a room on a floor beneath him. Who else did you stay with? Many other people. We had Isaiah Giddings, we had Brian Helion, we had Freedom Vibe. And what'd you guys do? Well, we hung out for a short time with Zach on January 5th, went to bed around 10 p.m. When you were hanging out with Zach, did you guys talk about attacking the Capitol? He says, no, absolutely not. No, we didn't do that. On January 6th, what happened? Well, I got up and met with some of the New Jersey Proud Boys. We had a little walk towards the lawn where the Capitol building is, and they had a big Teletron thing going on there, and people were making speeches. I didn't see any of the speeches, but I had heard them. He says the crowd was so overwhelming. I didn't get too far past the street. It was cold and windy. We got a bunch of guys from New Jersey together. They weren't happy from previous times in DC. I told them, stay out of trouble. Don't make us look terrible and have fun in DC. One of the people I ended up leaving with, I figured whatever was being said on the telecon would be on TV in a bar with wings and warmth. So we went to the Marriott Hotel guest lounge and we ordered wings and pizza and we ate. Probably insurrection wings to prepare for sedition, protein and carbs. Typical. Any conversations with my client, Zachary Rehl? No. He never told you anything about attacking the Capitol? No. Earlier, he mentioned a chapter called the MOSD, the Ministry of Self-Defense. Yeah. He wanted you to be a part of that. Yeah. You had a Telegram handle. Is that true? Yeah. What was your name, Uncle Tony? Uncle Tony from the New Jersey chapter is in a spreadsheet. He says, yeah, he was a fourth degree Proud Boy. He was brought in by Zach, some guy who attended a lot of rallies. He filled out a form to get admitted into the chat, going through the form again. So when this form was filled out, it says that you won't use drug or alcohol during the event. Yeah. It says that when you're at an event, in order to get into this, I will always act in self-defense and never initiate a confrontation. Is that right? Yeah. Now, have you replaced Danny Mack as chapter president? Yeah. Do you know how that replacement came about? Objection sustained. Carmen says, did you bring any weapons to your insurrection? No. Of any kind? No. How would you describe, asks Carmen, how would you describe the Proud Boys' ability to organize? He said, terribly. Okay. If we organized a picnic, half would show up to the wrong location. The rest would show up late. And if they were sober, they'd get bonus points. Carmen Hernandez says, no further questions. We're done here. How would you describe the Proud Boys' ability to organize? Terribly. If we organized a picnic, half would show up the wrong location. The rest would show up late. If they were sober, they'd get bonus points. Carmen Hernandez is now done. So that is the finish there. Prosecutor Kennerson hops up on cross and gets into the following. He says, okay, Mr. Finley. No, this is Miss, what is the name? Anthony Gouffre. Anthony didn't bring any weapons. Carmen Hernandez is done. Anthony now gets a cross-examination from Knirson. So, Anthony, you were pretty close to Rehl, weren't you? Yeah. And he helped you become the president in New Jersey? No. When you say New Jersey chapter, is that all the state? He says, yeah, I live in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's 15, 20 minutes from Philadelphia. It's close to all of the other bridges. Now, I want to ask you about this spreadsheet. Prosecutor brings out that he was added at a certain time. He says, that's Georgia Standard Time? Whatever time that was. He says, but you weren't a big participant in this chat, were you? He says, that's right. I wasn't a big participant. You were a rally boy, right? Yeah. And Rehl was a rally boy? He says, well, Rehl was a party boy. He didn't really go to the rallies. Yeah, he didn't go to all the rallies. So he went to the rallies in D.C. as well? Yeah, I know he was in D.C., yes. December 2020? Hernandez says, objection, scope. They have a sidebar. They say Zachary Rehl was here for the rally in December 2020. Well, there were multiple rallies, but he was here for at least one? Yeah. And he was back here on January 6th, wasn't he? He was one of the leaders in the Ministry of Self-Defense chat, that's for sure. Says, I don't know. I didn't take part in the room itself, though I signed up. I was not in the chapter. And you were added to the Ministry of Self-Defense by Rehl, is that true? But you were not aware this was a national rally planning chapter? He says the MOSD wasn't exactly what it says, right? The reason was that on 12/12, 3 Proud Boys had been stabbed. So to prevent that, the MOSD was there to assure that our members weren't stabbed or hit with frozen water bottles. Now, you never knew the Ministry of Self-Defense was a national rally planning chapter? Repeats the question. He says, well, common sense, so I'd say yes, but my knowledge is only Philadelphia and New Jersey. So was Wyoming involved? I don't know. I'd say nationally, yeah, there were other members. Putting aside the definition of national, were you aware that the MOSD was a rally planning chapter? He says, no, it was self-defense. So you were not a participant in the chat at all? Correct. I didn't even include myself in it. So you weren't paying attention, right? Right. And you came down on January 5th? Yeah. And you wound up in the same hotel as Rehl? Yeah. Is that coincidental? Yeah. You didn't plan with Rehl to come down here? Correct. When you spoke with Rehl about coming down here to DC, that was prior to him adding you to the chat? I don't know. They put up the messages. As January 6th approached, you wanted to know where to meet, right? Yeah. And you texted Rehl? Yeah. And Rehl told you on January 5th that he was going to meet up with Rufio to go over some things, right? And you were not privy to what happened on the 5th, right? Prosecutor is continuing on. Defense objects. Overruled. Now, on January 5th, you went to an area where this was happening, weren't you? Yeah. And the crowd was so big you couldn't maneuver around. He said the crowd was very thick. Did you meet up with other Proud Boys at the Washington Monument? No. You didn't see Rehl at all? No, not at all. You didn't speak with Rehl on the 6th, right? Correct. We were in the hotel all day in the lounge, had CNN on. Did you see rioters had breached the Capitol grounds on CNN? Yeah. Did you go to the Capitol at that point? No. Why not? Didn't seem like a great thing to do. Prosecutor's done. Now, defense attorney Hernandez chimes in. She comes back very quickly, says, Zach Rehl was a party boy, right? And he liked to drink, didn't he? Yeah. No further questions. We're done. Roger Parloff is excusing the jury, says tomorrow will be a half day, says I have a hard stop today, so I'm signing off too. Roger Parloff is done. And so that, my friends, is it for day 47 of the trial. Now, I'm understanding that the stream is very wonked out. I don't know why that is. Look, everything seems like it's good on my end for whatever reason. I'm going to try to make a couple changes. To see what's going on, but it says excellent connection on my end. Yeah, apparently it's good on locals. For some reason, it's not good on the other sessions. Okay, so we are going to take a quick break, and let me go take a look at what this is, what's going on here. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do day 48. In a minute. If I can figure out what is going on right now. Okay, so I'm going to be right back. Give me about a minute, 2 minutes. In the meantime, going to turn you over to my brother, Joey, who's going to guide us through something nice. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
How are you, ladies and gentlemen? This is Joey Wood and Timmy Mickelson. I'll be beating him up soon. We're talking about Harry Potter and the Curse of the Child. Tim, coming on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Oh. All right, buddy. My people, this is Tim Mickelson. We're talking about Harry Potter and the Curse of the Child, Part 1 and Part 2. Yeah, buddy.
Hi. Harry Potter good. Harry Potter and the Curse of the Child. Hold on, how to? It's coming real soon. It will be Death Valley. It's next.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, all the Harry P movies are my favorite movies to watch. Right, pal?
Yeah, right. It will be The Hero of the Sword. V.E. Clinton.
Yes, we're talking about that Curse of a Child. Part 1 comes first. I don't know when it's coming out yet. You can't wait to see that coming. You want to say something?
Oh yeah. It's a lot of Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, all the trilogy movies, all the Harry Potters. The first one is a Sword and Stone.
Sword and Stone, Saber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows, Part 1 and Part 2.
And the Curse of a Child, Part 1 and Part 2.
And and the death valley.
Thanks, buddy.
They have the soul in V.E. Clinton.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you those the video of the cursive child coming up on now. And YouTube.
Albus Severus Potter.
Yeah, buddy. All right, that's my brother Jojo and my friend, his friend Timmy, and my friend too. We are trying to figure out what is going on with the stream over here. Not sure that it's going to change anytime soon. I just checked all of the other devices in the house and I can't diagnose it. So we'll continue on and see what else we can get through today. This is day 48. And it's still blurry, huh? Zutral says it's good on locals. All right. Well, I don't know what's going on, but I'll re-upload a cleaner version of the stream when we're done. All right. Let's just get right into it. Proud Boys trial, day 48. We continue on. Roger Parloff is live tweeting, and he caught us up to speed. We've already read through the days 47 events, and here we have last night, Roger Parloff tells us the government traded filings over the admissibility of character witnesses. Carmen Hernandez wants to call in a new witness called Henry McGill. This is his character reference. He wants to speak about this. Last night, after the jury was excused, attorney Norm Pattis indicated that Biggs would probably not testify, but that they wanted a stipulated agreement that would be admitted. Pattis indicated that he wants to play 90 minutes or more of a Zoom meeting of a Ministry of Self-Defense chat. Pattis says this would be mind-numbingly dull, but it would apparently be appropriate. They want to show that the MOSD was all about self-defense and preventing a reoccurrence of the stabbings. They also think it would show how disorganized and incompetent the Proud Boys were. They want to play a whole Zoom meeting about this. Judge Kelly takes the bench. It's day 48. Judge says, oh, great. Says, we've got another ill juror today. No reason to think the illness is serious and that they wouldn't be able to be present on Monday. He says, given that it's half hour, my thought is not to dismiss the juror, but I'll consult with you all. The rest of the jury is here. Prosecutor says, I agree with you, Judge. It makes sense to preserve the composition of the jury. Norm Pattis says they agree. Says, Your Honor, we never heard back about the court's in-camera review of the classified spill from the infamous spreadsheet, which is very convenient. They never heard back from that, which was the spreadsheet from FBI agent Nicole. Remember, she sent over the Jenks material after she testified, and they found thousands of rows of hidden materials in there. Norm Pattis says, hey, Your Honor, just wanted to check in on this, the camera review of the classified spill from the infamous spreadsheet. You're going to get back to us on that? Judge says, oh, Norm, you sly dog. I was hoping you'd forget about that. I can't believe you remembered that. Wow. So the judge says, I'll get back to you on that. I can't believe you remembered that. I was hoping you'd forget about it, but I'll think about it over the weekend. Meanwhile, we get a 5-minute break to inform the other jurors that there will be no evidence today. Oh, man, is this going to be super short? He says, by my notes, today's sick juror is a Black woman who manages a group home for individuals with disabilities. She had brothers in the military, 4 cousins in MPD, hadn't heard anything about the Proud Boys before this trial. She'd heard of BLM, but to me, all lives matter. Interesting. So the prosecutors really want her to stick around. Also, neither side had objected to this juror when she was seated. So the defense also is okay with her too. She's juror number 6. Judge Kelly comes back on the bench and says, all right, everybody. Well, if we're going to have a short day today, we should be prepared to talk about jury instructions by Monday. Prosecutor says, well, thank you, Your Honor. We propose about 3 to 4 days, prepose. Take a full day through the afternoon break. We could do a charge conference, or maybe 3 to 4 days. Could do a charge conference in late afternoon, but it's also clear to clear away the underbrush for the following day. Says we'd propose charge conferences, the jury instructions, Monday and Tuesday afternoon. So maybe the jury trial to 3:30 or 4 o'clock each day, and then we'll wrap up with the jurors, and then we'll go through jury instructions, maybe Monday and Tuesday. Prosecutor says, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So we say, okay, that sounds great to me. Now he turns back over to Miss Hernandez's witness, Mr. McGill. And Mr. McGill, as we know, is going to be this guy who wanted to testify on behalf of Zach Rehl. And he filed this for Zach Rehl's bond hearing. He says, hey, I served in the Marine Corps with Rehl, met in Yuma, Arizona, shout out. Discharged, went and attended, known him for a long time. I speak to his business acumen, community outreach. He created an atmosphere that was inclusive, provided jobs to the local community. He's great as a veteran. I appreciate this work. He's learned from this experience. Please allow him to post bail to be a service to his country. And they say, no, we don't care about that. What are you kidding? He's an insurrectionist. And so that means he has to be incarcerated indefinitely. So that is who we're talking about. And they bring this back up. The judge says, I want to talk about this. And Miss Hernandez is witness. Very interesting question, he says. And it's kind of a close call here. The question is whether the reputation for truthfulness is admissible here. The usual contours of that is that when there's an element of the offense that bears on truthfulness, but it's a flexible rule, he says. There are times when the nature of evidence can put the defendant's credibility at issue. Judge says here, there are 2 main factors that may tip the scale in favor of letting the defendant put this witness on. One element of the offense is obstruction, is corruptly. So you'd bring this character witness out to show he's not corrupt. But in addition, the case has been shot through with the idea of deception, that the ministry of self-defense was created for one ostensible purpose, which was really created for another. Judge says the defendants didn't wear colors that day. So I'm open to Miss Hernandez being able to put on character evidence of that trait. Wow. Very interesting. The other question is if the character witness testifies about peacefulness, then I would permit the government to cross by showing the glorification of violence, right? So if the defense brings in this witness to talk about what a great guy Zach is. And he's done all of these other really good things. And the government is going to want to show, well, okay, if we can talk about other things outside of January 6th that he did good, why can't we talk about other things outside of January 6th that he did bad? The judge says, yeah, I agree with you guys. In fact, the government could show those videos. They could. If he posted other things, then that's fair. The judge is making the ruling, and Hernandez says, well, hold on a minute, Judge. I don't think that's how this works. I'm going to look into this in more case law about this. And we'll argue, like, the judge allowed her to bring in some external evidence to show character, but she's saying, well, I don't think they can do the same thing that I can do. Let me look into it. I'll get back to you. Roger Roots, who's another defense attorney, stands up for Dominic Pizzola. Dominic Pizzola wants to testify about a subpoena that he's trying to issue for, guess who? Ray Epps to testify. They want to drag his butt in here. But we're continuing to talk about McGill for the time being. So Roger Roots comes back and he says, Your Honor, we filed a motion this morning to serve Ray Epps by publication. They want Ray Epps to come and testify. They said our process server has made 3 attempts at what we believe is his residence, trying to go serve him to get him here. But someone has put a chain around that residence. So we think he's actively preventing service. Isn't that interesting? Judge says, I haven't read the motion. It was just filed. Government hasn't read it either. Says, we'll await till the government files their response, and then we'll take a look at it. He says, well, that's it for today. We got a sick juror, which is not what I was preparing for. I thought we were going to have a full day here. But we do have a motion to read through, which we will now queue up. So trial is over. We already had another sick juror who makes our second sick juror in the time that we've been covering this, but it has been going on for several months now. So let's see what that motion looks like. We're going to queue this puppy up as soon as the website loads. So that we can red pen this puppy up. Here we have it. This is Dominic Pizzola's motion to serve Ray Epps. Filed March 31st, 10 pages. A service of Ray Epps by publication. Coming from Dominic Pizzola, defendant in the Proud Boys trial. This is the motion to get a subpoena granted by service through publication. Not by physically serving him, going and saying, hey, are you Ray? Here you go. But actually publishing this material so that he is served by notice through publication, by literally pushing an ad in various newspapers, publishing it, notifying Ray Epps that he is due to testify. Here, the argument is that Ray Epps was an attendee at the demonstrations in and around the Capitol on January 6th. And he was also at rallies on January 5th. They write, video recordings introduced previously in the trial show Ray Epps interacting with Dominic Pizzola and Ryan Samsel and many others on Capitol grounds on January 6th. They say upon information and belief, Epps was playing the role of instigator, urging Pizzola, Samsel, and many others to push forward and get closer to the Capitol. In some cases, Epps was telling demonstrators that reinforcements were on the way from some undisclosed source upon information and belief from several sources. They write, it has recently surfaced in another January 6th case, the case of William Pope before Judge Contreras, that at least 3 undercover agents secretly representing DC Metro Police were also acting similarly to Epps, going through the crowd on J6 to instigate and to stoke the crowd into storming the Capitol. They say it's significant that the government appears to be protecting Epps. Ray Epps was on the FBI's most wanted list. Epps has never been indicted or arrested for his activities. This is despite the facts that Ray Epps is the only demonstrator who publicly, multiple times actually, urged protesters on video to enter the Capitol. Ray Epps played a direct role in instigating the first breach on the West Side. Ray Epps is seen on video recordings all over the West Plaza and grounds of the U.S. Capitol, and often within a short distance from Dominic Pizzola on January 6th. Now, I am saying that Ray Epps was also in the Capitol building, and I didn't see that articulated here. Unless what he means is all over the West Plaza, meaning in the West Plaza. And we have already covered this in the depot from Ray Epps, which is right here. This is the interview of Ray Epps. And I've seen people say that Ray Epps was not in the Capitol. This was the select committee to investigate January 6th. We've already read through the full thing in a video here on our channel if you missed it. But these losers were there asking questions, Schiff, Murphy, Aguilar, and Kinzinger. There were no actual Republicans asking any substantive questions. But on the Ray Epps depot, scroll all the way down to page 58. We're asking ourselves whether Ray Epps was in the Capitol building. Here is what we see. When it broke out, Ray, did you follow the crowd into, they didn't even finish the question because they didn't want to ask it. Did you follow the crowd into, did you leave the Capitol? Tell us what happened once. Ray says this: I took a couple of steps in. I just looked around and I was sick. There was a lot of tear gas, a lot of bad stuff going on. So I started to leave and I heard somebody screaming for a medic. So at that point, I had my first aid kit. And at that point, I went in. I went up where I found an individual lying on the ground, lifeless. I knelt down, took his vitals. Another medic showed up and he was in there. I lost my voice. And we got all the way out to the lawn. By the time later down the road, we had to cross the road. We got to the lawn, and that was the end. So the morons conducting this deposition didn't ask any follow-up questions about this. They hated this answer. They really didn't want him to even go in it. I don't know who asked this question because these transcripts are literally a joke. So somebody asked him this question: did you follow the crowd into, did you leave the Capitol? Tell us what happened. There's 3 questions there. So why don't you just say, I want to know the first one. Walk me through what drew you in. And he just volunteered this. I took a couple of steps in and then I started to leave, but then I went in. Ray Epps went in. He was in there according to his own transcripts. So when we take a look at this motion, he's on video recordings all over the West Plaza and apparently inside the Capitol. I don't know if that's what he means by that specifically, but he was definitely on the grounds of the Capitol as well. Now, they tell us that Ray Epps has been dodging service. So therefore, they hired a professional process server with process servers in Arizona to go and subpoena Ray Epps to get him to testify. The company is based out of Washington. It's called ABC Legal Services. They sent a professional process server to Ray Epps's last known address. They're not going to publish the address here, but it's not secret. They say Ray Epps is the owner of a ranch or a farm, apparently a non-working rancher farm, not operating, near Phoenix, Arizona. I believe it's out in Queen Creek here, not too far from here, about an hour away. The location is openly and publicly announced in advertising as a venue for weddings, wedding receptions, or other events. Therefore, publicly announced by Ray Epps and his own actions through public advertising. It appears that the town in question straddles Pinal County, Arizona, and Maricopa County, and they're trying to identify him. In gushing news coverage, heaping praise on Ray Epps, replete with clearly false information, Ray Epps was depicted by the New York Times as having sold his ranch, purchased a recreational vehicle, and taken up wandering a transient life, possibly to evade service of process. Our process servers have doggedly tracked leads and concluded there is no information about any other contact addresses for Epps, not even a mailbox or a UPS store or intermediary. The guy has gone ghost. Our process servers assert that Ray Epps is ensconced in his last known address, hundreds of feet away from public roadways behind a locked gate. All known public records, including deed records, suggest that Epps has not relocated and that news coverage suggesting otherwise is inaccurate. ABC Legal Services made multiple attempts to serve Ray Epps at his last known address and his announced abode. The witness subpoena was posted and mailed in apparently valid service under the rules of Arizona. They give us a footnote here. They say, as is typical, the New York Times offers a breathless news that new information undercuts theories of Ray Epps's clearly confirmed role in organizing the so-called riots. They find and cite new evidence, which is entirely of Ray Epps declaring, I didn't do it. That's it. So they continue. The process server noted no activity, no cars at the locations that he tried to attempt service. On his third attempt, he noted that someone had just added a padlock to the gate since his second attempt. Thus, Ray Epps was in fact home at the location, or else he came home in between the visits and reacted to the attempted service by adding an external padlock to the gate. Ray Epps is locked down. Now, the ranch has not been sold because there were no new owners observed. They would have no reason to evade the process server, and they would naturally come out to ask what's going on. In addition to the lack of a deed transferring the ranch, there is a lack of any new owners in evidence as well. The timeline floated by an adoring news media would require that any such sale was completed 6 to 18 months ago. No evidence of a sale has been found, and it's not conspicuous if it was. Thus, Ray Epps has been served by posting and mailing at his last known address. Meanwhile, Pizzola, by counsel, has also sent a request to Ray Epps's lawyer, Justin Teeter, and his counsel recently in the last 2 weeks issued a demand letter. So we know his lawyer is active because his lawyer is sending letters out to other people. The type customarily and usually sent preceding the filing of litigation. Tucker Carlson got an order by them to retract his statements about Ray Epps by March 31st. That's today. You think Tucker is going to come out on his show tonight and say, sorry, America, Ray Epps is an honest man. And definitely not a Fed. Not hold my breath on that one. Mr. Carlson's on-air reporting means playing on air the video recording showing Ray Epps organizing and inciting demonstrators to go into the Capitol, saying on video that people should do so because that's where our problem is, suggesting that he intended and openly tried to induce the crowds to disrupt congressional proceedings, and even declaring on video, saying, I'm probably going to be arrested for saying this. To which the crowd said, then don't say it. Thus, Mr. Teeter is a current active legal representative of Mr. Epps, and Mr. Epps has publicly, hiring a public relations firms, announced his desire to set the record straight. That's what he said. Let's let him come in and testify. Thus, there is awareness of these issues in this case and of Ray Epps's relevance as a witness. Now, Tucker Carlson, as others before him have seen, played these videos and video recordings of Ray Epps doing what these defendants are accused of and accurately reporting that Ray Epps has not been arrested or formally charged for actually doing what these defendants now are at bar falsely accused of doing. We just saw Ray Epps was in the Capitol. We just saw Ray Epps was the first one at the breach. We just saw that Ray Epps was there the day before shouting into the Capitol, into the Capitol, into the Capitol. We know that Ray Epps has had time hanging out with Stuart Rhodes, who was an Oath Keeper here as a member of the Oath Keepers in Arizona at different activities here. We've covered all of it. But he didn't get charged. Why not? A public relations firm mass distributed Michael Teeter's letter to Tucker Carlson, but did not include any contact information for the lawyer himself. Therefore, Pizzola's legal team spent considerable time and effort locating Michael Teeter's new law office through the Utah State Bar. Pizzola, by counsel, sent the Ray Epps witness subpoena to Ray Epps's lawyer, Michael Teeter. Michael Teeter is also one of the leaders of the 65 Project, which openly declares that its mission and activities are to professionally attack and disbar conservative attorneys. What? What is this? This guy's the managing director of this, according to this website, Influence Watch. The 65 Project is a campaign targeting lawyers who aided attempts by Donald Trump to do things. This was devised by Democratic consultants and former Clinton administration official Melissa Moss. It's a project of LawWorks, a group with no website or public financial disclosures. They're coming after lawyers. They're going to come after doctors. They're going to come after every professional who doesn't bend the knee to them and take their licenses away, take their livelihoods away. They try to do it. I mean, they've done it with the military, tried to purge everybody there. They've done it with social media, purged everybody there. They're doing it now in the judicial system, trying to prosecute people for crimes like Donald Trump. We'll get there in a minute. It is a project of LawWorks. LawWorks previously received grants from the Democracy Fund and the Fiscal Project, a nonprofit organization that provides training and support to advance and broaden the appeal of the professional progressive cause. It refers to the number of lawsuits filed by supporters of the president, 65 Project. The mission was launched to punish lawyers who supported Trump. Again, it's not just going to be Trump. This is just a starting point. It's going to be DeSantis. It's going to be Cruz. It's going to be Rand Paul. It's going to be anybody else who runs. And again, they are cheaters. They are the biggest cheaters on the planet. They won most of those lawsuits, all of them. So why do they need to disbar the lawyers? Because they don't want to deal with it again. They don't like how close they got. They don't want any of it to be exposed. So they want to silence people. The censors are the cheaters. The people who don't want you to run in the race and they disqualify you by saying you're wearing the wrong shoes or something like that, something totally irrelevant. They are very, very, very disgusting. They're going after lawyers now, but we know doctors have been hit for COVID. Teachers are going to be hit for not pushing propaganda, whatever they're trying to shove down your gullets. It's not going to stop, right? Every single trade, every single individual who doesn't bend the knee is going to come under scrutiny here. So that's what they're doing. And Michael Teeter apparently works with them. Managing director from the 65 Project, Michael Teeter, according to this website. This is their work at the 65 Project. Managing director, Michael Teeter. There he is. Where did he go to school? He went to Yale Law School. Michael has focused his career on political law, civil rights, employment law. Prior to taking the role as managing director, general counsel for advocacy organization dedicated to expanding ballot access. There you go. Dedicated to expanding ballot access. Served, where'd he go? Served as the assistant attorney general for the state of Utah, one of the faculty's highest institutions of higher education, con law, admin law, statutory interpretation, and election law. Managing director. So it's lawyers going after other lawyers. And this is senior advisor Melissa Moss. Ugh. Yeesh. Melissa, president, veteran political strategist, senior advisors, Clinton administration, DNC, director of the DLC, Democratic Leadership Council, and went to Harvard. Of course she did. Looks like a Harvard person. So does Teeter. Actually, they both look like interesting individuals. So you can see what they're doing, and it's not going to stop here. They're going to go after attorneys, doctors, teachers, tradespeople, anybody. You know, I would imagine if you don't build your house, you know, if you're in construction, as I built swimming pools before I went to law school, and you don't, you know, comport with ESG or hiring tendencies and all. Everybody's on the hook. This is how they're going to get you to adhere to this new nation that they're trying to build, or let's say this new totalitarian dictatorship. So this is the rest of the motion. Michael Teeter is listed on the website. However, Pezzola's counsel did not want to assume he would receive communication on a pending case through the 65 Project, or that the information was current, and went the extra mile to track down Michael Teeter's current and official contact information. Now, despite setting today as a deadline for Tucker Carlson to respond to Michael Teeter, though curiously without providing a place where Mr. Carlson could respond, Teeter has not answered Pozzola's counsel. Professional duties in Utah would, of course, require Mr. Teeter to maintain current and accurate contact information with the Utah State Bar. Nevertheless, Ray Epps received notice of the witness subpoena through his own chosen attorney, who is now actively working on Ray Epps' involvement in the J6 cases. Defense says, and it matters. The main crimes charged against Pozzola, Proud Boy, and the other defendants is inciting and planning and organizing an attack on the Capitol so it would disrupt Congress. So Ray Epps doing what these defendants are accused of is mutually exclusive and incompatible with the defendant's guilt. Why was Ray Epps, who did literally the exact same things as these guys did, not on trial? In fact, he got played with in a game of patty cake from Kinzinger and Schiff and these weirdos in a weird interview where they didn't even ask him hard questions. Unlike the crime of trespassing on the national park, presumptively open to the public, many people could be found simultaneously guilty. If there were signs still intact and showing giving notice, the main charges here are not susceptible of guilt by multiple people or groups. The fact that Ray Epps is caught on camera doing what these defendants are accused of doing is an actual contradiction of the charges against these defendants. They say, whereas there remains no evidence whatsoever, despite lots of feelings and frustrated talk amongst the defendants, that these defendants planned or plotted anything. Every witness has denied that there was a plan. These defendants are charged with attempting to overthrow the government, armed with only radios and goggles. What a joke. Although, in fact, the prosecution has proven nothing of the sort, only that they were frustrated and mad like a lot of other people. The government has invented a new tools theory that is novel and imminently appealable, suggesting that people can be essentially members of a conspiracy without even knowing about it. They say this is going to keep the Court of Appeals busy for years. Tools of Trump. They were a part of a conspiracy they didn't even know they were a part of. But here, whereas the government accuses the defendants of inciting tools, a very disrespectful term, which is not the undersigned counsel's term, to attack the Capitol with no evidence of that whatsoever, we have Ray Epps on video and video recordings doing exactly what the government accuses these defendants of doing. And it cannot be both because, one, the criminal prosecutions are based on actual evidence and not overactive imaginations. And two, the issue of being an organizer, not a participant. Many people could be and were participants in peaceful and sometimes unruly crowds at different places and times. But the issue here is who was an organizer, who was a plotter, who was a conspirator. The only evidence of that, and we go by evidence here, not speculation or conjecture, is Ray Epps. If for no other reason, Pozzola is entitled to Ray Epps' testimony as to why he was doing what we see captured on video. Why was he doing that? Was there something else going on here? Yeah. Every witness has denied there was ever a plan for any of these defendants to attack or storm the Capitol or to disrupt Congress during a joint session of Congress. If, as expected, Ray Epps, the only person known to be inciting people to go inside the Capitol and to disrupt Congress, if he similarly testifies that he knows of no involvement by the Proud Boys in any of this, then defendants would be entitled to this exculpatory evidence being presented to the jury. And so to overcome the holes in the government's case, as always in unique J6 jurisprudence, the government has tried to offer maybes, where proof beyond a reasonable doubt is required. It's not maybe, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Perhaps the total lack of any witnesses claiming there was ever any plan or conspiracy as alleged is because the witness didn't know about the plan. But that's not how the criminal law works. At least it wasn't until political motives corrupted criminal law. The government cannot patch over its lack of evidence well, maybe this witness just didn't know about the conspiracy and the plans. The government must prove individual guilt by each individual defendant beyond a reasonable doubt, not the mere possibility by conjecture that there could have been an unseen conspiracy that nobody knew about. There is one person who knew about the plan, whatever it was, Ray Epps. We have his actions caught on video showing that. The defense asks, was Ray Epps part of a conspiracy with a pick any name or agency? Does it matter? Pizzola is entitled to his testimony regardless. Under no circumstances is Ray Epps not a key witness. Maybe Ray Epps thought this plan up all by himself. That doesn't matter. He is still a key witness of the events happening near my client, Dominic Pizzola. The fact that the power-happy DOJ has somehow lost its appetite for prosecuting people only when it comes to one person called Ray Epps is impossible to reconcile. But that changes nothing about Pizzola's rights to call Epps as a witness. Did it have anything to do with the Proud Boys? Asked the defense. Is any normal civil or criminal case on any topic, no matter what it was about or who was involved, a typical lawyer would ask, in any case, who else did you talk to about this? Why were you doing this? Was it your idea or someone else's idea? Tell me everything you know about who was involved in this. As it turns out, the strange theory of the tools, again, not our term, it's pejorative, actually applies to the Proud Boy defendants here being fall guys for someone else. Before they spend decades perhaps in jail, they are entitled to testimony about for whom they are the fall guys. For whom they are the fall guys. They say this court is authorized to create service by publication. They cite some law here in a bin Laden case. The requirements for service by publication to order Ray Epps to come and testify are that the party seeking the service of the subpoena must have made diligent efforts to serve the witness by traditional means. They say, here we have. We've identified their proponents. We've identified service by publication. And here, notice to Ray Epps, his active attorney, should be adequate in the court's case. But Pizzola will publish notice in the Arizona newspapers regardless. And so in conclusion, Roger Roots for Dominic says, therefore, we request the court authorize the service of Ray Epps and that the court consider Ray Epps has already been notified through his attorney, an attorney who's currently active on the same topic that Ray Epps is already engaged in, and finally allow Ray Epps to come into trial to testify and to set the record straight. The court authorizes by order of service of the subpoena on Ray Epps. They say he's authorized to accept service, and we're going to be publishing this in the Arizona Republic and local newspapers very soon. Signed, your friend, Roger Roots. Now, the judge is, of course, going to take a look at this and just say, well, it's a nice argument, but we really don't want Ray Epps to testify. The government will respond to this, and then we will see what that looks like and what the judge does with Ray Epps. I would not expect to see him testifying in this trial, but only time will tell. And so that, my friends, is the updates on the Proud Boys trials. We are caught up. There will be more to come next week. And of course, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for joining us as we do. Thank you for liking this video, subscribing, sharing it with friends and family, wherever it is you're watching it. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Now, we're not done, my friends. We're going to continue on. And we're going to hit the Trump news, and then we're going to call it a day. I don't think we're going to come back. Well, let's see what's going on out there. Let's see what some of the headlines say. We have a lot of headlines to attend to on this topic. And let's see what's happening right now, shall we? Before we do that, let's say hello to the chat and see what we've got in the chat. Take a little bit of a break here. And I think we're going to run out of time on locals in a quick minute. But we do need to get into some Trump updates, I think. I think we'll just keep streaming right now and we'll not come back tonight. We'll just keep going since we're here. And it looks like it is, the feeds are working a little bit better. And we'll do some Trump updates. From various locations. We had a couple super chats come in. Thank you for those. From Voice of the People. Said, remember when I told you about EO 14067? Now the Restrict Act would give the government full control of all digital transactions, only a step or two away from social governance and credit scores. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening right now in the digital and money space. Certainly. Voice says, also, I'm going to call it now. Trump indictment will be used to memory hole Nashville when Trump walks because there's nothing there. Media will start causing outrage. There will be another summer of love in 2024. Yeah, that's probably a good prediction, actually. Another summer of love. Well, there's already Nashville, Tennessee insurrection of their Capitol building and love. So that's going on as we speak. But all right, so let's just keep this train on the track and see what else is going on out there, because there are a lot of updates. They're all happening in real time. And so we might as well just get to them in real time. Let's get queued up. Let's queue up a couple things. Why don't we start off with Drudge? See what he's got for us. New news on the Trump indictment front, apparently looking at 34 counts. This story comes over from CNN. They tell us some things that they say we need to know. Updates coming in. They say Trump faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud in an indictment from a Manhattan grand jury. Two sources familiar with the case are talking about this. Earlier on Thursday, spokesperson for Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg said the office has contacted Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender for an arraignment on a Supreme Court indictment. All of that remains under seal. They tell us that guidance will be provided next week when the arraignment is selected. So Trump will appear in court early next week. The defense attorney said. Trump's attorney, Chris Kesey, who we've heard a lot about, said this is the lowest point in our history for our criminal justice system. Said what was once the most respected and revered district attorney's office in the nation has been fully bastardized by an opportunistic politician seeking, like many others, to cash in on the Trump brand. The complete lack of legal basis, coupled with the politically targeted nature of the prosecution, would strike fear into every citizen in this country, irrespective of their views of President Trump. Now, they tell us that this is not supposed to impact the timing of the Georgia probe. We talked about this yesterday. There were several different probes, investigations that are all taking place. One of them is out of Georgia. The others are the special counsel investigations, all of which I expect will continue on. But the question was always, who is going first? And I wanted to see what else was happening on this. And I had a list of all of the Congress people that C-SPAN had put together. And so here we have some statements from Congress people. This came from Representative Andy Ogles. Well, let's see what we have here. Hold on a minute. We get some updates. Here's some updates from the New York Times. Trump is likely to be arraigned on Tuesday. Updated 6 minutes ago. Now, Tuesday is a very interesting date because that's when Trump said he was going to be arrested previously, on a Tuesday. Charges against Trump will formally be unsealed when he is arraigned, so that is normal. We'll follow that same process. He is the first former president to be a criminal defendant. Here's the latest. There's an unprecedented moment in American history. Alvin Bragg issued a statement. I was trying to grab that on Twitter. Very, very brief statement. Looks like Twitter didn't save any of my bookmarks from yesterday. Not very nice of them. But Alvin Bragg and his office did post something about this. Let's continue to read. A day after the grand jury voted to indict Trump, his office, who rebuked House Republicans, sent a new letter. The case, which could drag on for months, will test the country's institutions and the rule of law. Trump has been charged with 24 counts. We got that. This is according to a person familiar with the matter. Although exact charges are unknown, it's not clear that New York will be the first case to go to trial. He still faces other investigations. Georgia is in the process of final stages there. And then it will be the special counsel's prosecution as well. We know that's going to be coming up. They're not going to let that one fly away. So it's just a matter of time. Now, yeah, I saved a bunch of stuff I wanted to get to, but it's not saved evidently. So we'll just carry on here. In a statement on Thursday, Mr. Trump called Mr. Bragg a disgrace. We read that yesterday. Trump's going to turn himself in on Tuesday. The New York Police Department issued an order for all officers to come out and be prepared for deployment. We'll see what that looks like. After months of cooler coverage for Trump, Fox News hosts rallied around him. No longer a heavy police presence outside of Mar-a-Lago. Ivanka Trump said, "I love my father." So she issued a statement on this. Former Vice President Mike Pence denounced this. Let's see what Pence had to say. Pence had a statement. We wanted to see if McCarthy had a statement. This looks like this came in over from Reuters. Let's watch this one. Here's what Mike Pence had to say.
I think the unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States for a campaign finance issue is an outrage. And I think it's clear to the overwhelming majority of the American people that this is nothing short of a political prosecution. And I believe the American people will see this for what it is. But to your point, the answer is not to become like them. The answer is to return to a commitment to the foundations of the rule of law enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. And the antidote to that ultimately is, Vince Lombardi said, sometimes there's no substitute for just going out and winning the ball game, right? And I really do believe that whether it's local prosecutors' races or the highest office in the land, we've got to rally behind men and women that are committed to the principles at the heart of our republic, that are committed to equal justice before the law and to a fair administration of justice.
So good statement from Mike Pence. He's running, obviously. I think that a lot of these people have to be concerned that if they are not supportive of Donald Trump, they're going to come after them next. They're very excited about that. And there's been some interesting other reactions to this. Nancy Pelosi, who was the Speaker of the House for a very long time, for some reason is not real familiar with how the presumption of innocence works in this country. Here's what she posted yesterday about Trump's indictment. She said at 5:15, March 30th, the following: "The grand jury has acted upon the facts and the law," is what she said. "No one is above the law, and everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence." What? She's the Speaker of the House. And she says that no one is above the law. Everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. Hopefully, the former president will peacefully respect the system, which grants him that right. Now, on Twitter, they added some context to this. They said, "Miss Pelosi mistakenly says that Trump can prove his innocence at trial. Moron idiot doesn't recognize that law in the U.S. assumes the innocence of a defendant. It's called the presumption of innocence, and the prosecution must prove guilt for a conviction." I don't know if she doesn't know that or if she's just intentionally trying to goad people here, but I think this is how they think, right? They actually think that Trump is already guilty. They don't care about due process. They know he's guilty. They know he's somebody who deserves the death penalty, but they don't care about what this does to the justice system in general, as long as they take him out. We've been hearing from others Other reactions from politicians, people who are running for office. Vivek had a very nice statement yesterday, and they had him on Tucker. Let's see what he said.
And Tucker, it's not.
How do you view this indictment?
This is a grave day in American democracy. I mean, this is a threat. This is fundamentally un-American. And Tucker, it's not even about Donald Trump. It's about every American, because if they can do it to Trump, they can do it to you. And this is something about that's bigger than partisan politics. Yes, I would like to defeat Donald Trump in this primary and in the election, but I want to do it by convincing every voter to vote for me, because at the end of the day, the American people get to decide who governs this country, not a politicized prosecutor. And if you want to know how it's politicized, this was a prosecutor who is effectively fulfilling a campaign promise that he made. If it's any individual citizen and a prosecutor campaigns on indicting him or investigating him, that itself is politicized, let alone when he's the lead member of the opposition party to the ruling party that's in power. And we are not a country, Tucker. Whoever we are as a country, it's not a country that allows police power to be used by the ruling party to arrest its political opponents. Yet that's exactly what happened today. And I don't care if you're on the left or the right, turn the table, wear the shoe on the other foot. The other side would be complaining. You know what? The same principles apply in reverse as well. It's a sad day, and I'm worried for the future of the country, because I do think we're skating on thin ice right now.
It is. There's open season now. I think any DA in any part of this country, do you realize all you have to do is run on opposing somebody, get elected, and then you've got your whole career laid out in front of you. You are now a political person, basically a political candidate, and you've got more power than a former president and somebody who's also leading in the polls. It's a great new strategy. All you got to do is just become the local district attorney, the local prosecutor, and you'll have a ton of power, enough power that you can subordinate a former president who's also running again. It's pretty insane what they've done here, but it must be by design. Now, Schiff and Rachel Maddow are very upset about this. Schiff posted this. He got the same memo. They all get faxed the same memo when this stuff comes through. They say Trump's indictment is an affirmation of the principle that no one is above the law. So he got the same message that got in his inbox. They say McCarthy's threat to interfere with the case and DeSantis's pledge not to extradite Trump would make him a kind of a king. No, you're right. We should just have him do whatever a partisan political hack Alvin Bragg wants to do. He's the king. He can just pick up any case that everybody else has declined and decide that he's going to throw off a whole election process on the basis of this. No, Schiff and Bragg could be made to be kings. He says, if we're a democracy, no one can violate the law with impunity. No one. Here's what these weirdos were talking about.
Citizen. It is, a sad and sobering historic day in the life of our country. The first time a president was indicted for criminal charges. It is also, I think, a vindication of the rule of law and the principle that people should be held accountable, whether they're rich and powerful, whether they're presidents or former presidents, or whether they're ordinary citizens, that prosecutors should follow the evidence. And if someone needs to go to jail because they were directed in a criminal scheme, then the person that did the directing should also be held to account. But at the same time, it is worrying to see once again Donald Trump engage in inciting his supporters, essentially threatening death and destruction if he were indicted, as he has now been. And it demonstrates, I think, the continuing peril to the country. I would just say it would be more perilous if we didn't observe the rule of law, if we bred disrespect for the law, if we treated him differently, that would be more dangerous. And so this is necessary, but obviously it's a momentous and tragic day.
Momentous and tragic day. These people have been waiting for this for years. This has been their life's work. Been working on this for the better part of a decade, and now it is coming to fruition. And so they have to just be as thrilled as can be. They're going to do the somber game, oh gosh, I can't believe that we have to deal with such an insurrectionist, but we have to do this. No one is above the law. That's their messaging. Now, there are others who are very upset about this. Josh Hawley is one of them, and he posted something that was very interesting yesterday. He said that these charges aren't about enforcing the law. Democrats barely pretend they are. They are left telling the nation, we are in charge here. And if you threaten us, we will destroy you. He also said that there is a moment that they will regret this, from Josh Hawley. They will regret this. It's not about the rule of law. It's not about nobody being above the law. It's about power, raw power. It's the Democratic Party telling the nation that they will stop at nothing to control the outcome of the next election. It's an assault on our democracy, pure and simple, and they will regret this. And he didn't even put a period at the end of this. That's how you know how serious this is. They will regret this. Send. Now, here's what he said when he was talking to Fox News about it.
Power. It is a demonstration. Well, I think what this is about is nothing to do with the rule of law, Jesse. Obviously, this is about power. It is a demonstration of raw power. I think the Democrats know this has nothing to do with the law. They're sending a message, and the message is they will use any power that they have to interfere in the next presidential election. They will not willingly allow Donald Trump to run for president. They will not willingly lose the next election. They're going to use every means at their disposal. And Jesse, these are the same people who have sent SWAT teams to pro-life activists, who use the FBI against parents at school board meetings. They will do anything, use any kind of power to try and hold on to their own privileges, their own positions. And we're seeing that tonight. This is just unprecedented in American history. And the only way out now is to win. Well, I think
he's right about that. You know, we're talking a little bit about the people who didn't vote for Trump. A lot of the people last time, they had the whole country oriented. Again, we had COVID, we had social media, we had all sorts of, litigation going on. A lot of things were happening back there in the prior election. And I remember talking to a lot of people who just, they said, well, Trump is just not, they found superficial reasons to be so irritated and agitated by him. And they use that as justification to not vote. Now, is this situation going to cause that same reaction? Are they going to still say, well, it's just our justice system. It's just the country becoming a banana republic. It's foreign leaders looking at the United States and saying, what are they doing here? This is the country that preaches about democracy and about clean and safe elections. What about El Salvador and what they're saying about this? Nayib, the president of El Salvador, Bukele, said the following. New York Times posted this 20 hours ago. This guy is the president of El Salvador. We already heard from the president of Mexico, who said they tried to keep him off the ballot. And what a joke that was, mocking the United States, preaching about their democracy and their liberalism. Here is what Nayib says. The New York Times says he will be fingerprinted. He will be photographed. He may even be handcuffed. Now that a Manhattan jury has voted to indict him, here's what's going to happen next. Nayib says, imagine if this happened to a leading opposition presidential candidate here in El Salvador. What would the country say? We'd all look at it. We go, oh gosh, can you believe that? Very undemocratic. Sadly, he says it'll be very hard for U.S. foreign policy to use arguments like democracy, which they have bastardized, made it a total joke, and free and fair elections. Similar. How are they going to try to condemn political prosecution around the world in other countries from now on? They can't, because it's a joke. That's from Nayib. And there's a lot of that type of reaction from around the world. It's going to be laughable to continue to make that argument, to say, how was it not election interference when you have 3 different indictments against the man? You could let Americans vote for him. If he's such a criminal, he's already running again. We can just vote for him. Or you could topsy-turvy the whole stinking system. Now, there are Trump allies in Congress who are upset about this, rightfully so. NBC News is reporting Trump allies erupt in a fury over the former president's indictment. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Reps Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others all pushed back against this. Here's a photo of Marjorie. They say Trump's most fervent Capitol Hill allies erupted in a fury on Thursday. They rushed to his defense. Outrageous, said Jim Jordan. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy wrote on Twitter. Let's see if we can grab that. See what McCarthy had to say about this. Okay, we've got some other news from Bloomberg that his arraignment is scheduled. We have a date and time now. We'll grab that in a minute. This is what McCarthy said. Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House. Here we go again. An outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who lets violent criminals walk as he pursues political vengeance against President Trump. Says, I'm directing relevant committees to immediately investigate if federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy by interfering in elections with politically motivated prosecutions. Right on. And that is from McCarthy, and that's supported by this here. He said, in addition to that, Alvin Bragg has irreparably damaged our country in an attempt to interfere in our presidential election. As he routinely frees violent criminals to terrorize the public, he weaponized our sacred system of justice against President Donald Trump. The American people will not tolerate this injustice, and the House of Representatives will hold Alvin Bragg and his unprecedented abuse of power to account. From McCarthy. And apparently others are joining in. Jordan, from the House Oversight Committee, the Administration Committee, they sent a letter earlier this month asking Bragg to come in and testify. Bragg responded. Ted Cruz has responded. And we also have Marjorie Taylor Greene responding. So we'll see what they have to say about any of this. She posted, she said, I stand with Trump. Pretty simple statement. And here is another message from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says, impeach Biden. He's giving us every reason, and the family banking records and more are giving us receipts. But now that the gloves are off, prosecute any and all crimes. Enough of this witch hunt BS. From Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she's fired up as well. And I just saw a story over from Bloomberg, which was telling us that they may have a time and date. Let's see what this says. Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon, he will plead not guilty. Law enforcement officials are scheduled to meet on security Friday afternoon. That's the day. Streets around the courthouse likely to be closed to vehicles. Donald Trump will be arraigned in the criminal case against him on Tuesday afternoon, following his indictment on Thursday. Going to take place at a hearing. A plea of not guilty will be entered at a hearing at New York State Supreme Courthouse, Lower Manhattan, Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. Wondering if this is going to be televised. We're waiting for more details on that. The person who asked not to be identified has not discussing details that haven't yet been announced. Law enforcement officials will meet today, Friday afternoon, ahead of Trump's arraignment to discuss security measures to be taken at and around the courthouse. Expected attendees include the NYPD, Secret Service, New York State court officials, court officers who see to security inside the building, as well as representatives of Bragg's office. The plans are currently to close down Center Street, where the courthouse is located, and Baxter Street, which runs behind it, to all vehicles. On Thursday, Trump became the first former president to be indicted. Bragg has been investigating this for a long time. Trump might get a mugshot. They say that there are a certain set of legal requirements in this historic event. He probably won't be handcuffed, is what Bloomberg said, or led before a scrum of clicking cameras in a traditional perp walk. And he will almost certainly be released on his own recognizance under the protection of the Secret Service detail rather than being detained. He's expected to be arraigned as early as Tuesday, according to his lawyer, who said that he would surrender. Now, part of the question yesterday Ron DeSantis said that he would fight his extradition. We saw that from Ron. He posted that on Twitter. He says, obviously, we're disappointed, but we will swiftly and aggressively fight these charges and pursue justice in this case. Trump said in a statement it was political persecution. He's 76 years old, former president. And so he is going to be self-surrendering. It doesn't sound like they're going to try to contest that. Ron DeSantis was saying they might support that, but Trump is not doing that. Now, we had some other responses that I think are worthwhile. Let's see what the Washington Post has. They're usually on this stuff. They tell us that Trump was caught off guard on this. They get leaks from, they get leaks. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they get leaks. Trump and his advisors apparently were caught off guard. Advisors had privately counseled Trump that an indictment would not come for some time. Obviously, it did. And we played clips here. We had even Lindsey Halligan. They all thought this case was dead. So it begs the question, why did it get brought back up? Bragg's office is also now accusing Republicans of unlawful political interference. So Republicans say that Bragg is committing election interference. They say, no, you're committing interference. The office of New York Attorney Alvin Bragg on Friday urged Republicans to withdraw the demand for information about the case against Trump. In a letter to the chairman of the committee who are pressing for documents and testimony, let's see if we can dig this letter up. I want to read it. This might be the newest one. It is. Here we have it. So let's pull this one up. This is the actual letter that Bragg sent. And we'll get that red pen out, mark this puppy up. See what Bragg had to say for us. March 31st, Alvin Bragg sends a letter. Tim Jordan, Brian Steele, James Comer in the GOP-led House, coming from the district attorney's office, Alvin Bragg Jr., March 31st. He says, Dear Chairman Jordan and other GOP congresspeople, he says, yesterday, the district attorney of New York filed charges against Donald Trump for violating New York law. The charges filed yesterday were brought by citizens of New York doing their civic duty as members of the jury who found probable cause to accuse Trump of having committed crimes in New York. Says, like any other defendant, Trump is entitled to challenge these charges in court and to avail himself of our laws. But he's not like any other defendant, Alvin. And this case is not even a good case like any other defendant. What neither Mr. Trump nor Congress may do is interfere with the ordinary course of proceedings. Your first letter made an unprecedented request about confidential information about Trump. And your second letter asserts that by failing to provide it, the DA somehow failed to dispute your baseless and inflammatory allegations and that our investigation is politically motivated. How dare you, he says. That conclusion is misleading and meritless. We did not engage in a point-by-point rebuttal of your letter because our office is legally constrained about how to process these cases. That secrecy is critical to protecting the integrity of a criminal investigation. Now, he says this again, it's going to be a lot of this rules stuff because this is how they think. Your committee lacks jurisdiction, he says. Your recent letter states that your purpose is to conduct an examination of the facts for interfering in criminal investigations. That's not what he's saying they're doing there, Alvin. And all of this is just, filler paragraphs. All of this is just copy paste stuff. So you can just delete all of it, basically. He says, but Congress has no warrant for interfering with individual criminal investigations. Congress is not saying they're doing that. Congress is in this investigating why you're interfering with elections, and they can come up with any reason to do whatever they want. That's the precedent that was set by the J6 committee, which wasn't even legally constituted under House Rule HR 503. Now they can investigate this. There's already precedent. The committee's attempted interference with an ongoing investigation is unprecedented and illegitimate. They're not doing that. So this is just a misframe. He says, moreover, your examination of the facts of a single criminal investigation for the supposed purpose of determining whether these are warranted is a usurpation of executive and judicial function. Again, that's not what he's claiming. And we have the other letter here. This is the one that they sent over to Bragg. Now, was this the first letter or the second letter? Anyways, the committee are conducting oversight. Your reply letter did not dispute the central allegations. They have all sorts of possible reasons to get into this. Profound impact on how presidents choose to exercise their powers. The federal government has a compelling interest in protecting the physical safety of former and current presidents. Right? They're not interfering with the investigation. Your committee, our committees are authorized. The inquiry, we could pass legislation over it. Congress can do whatever they want. All right. So Bragg, it's Congress. I don't like it. I wish they didn't have the ability to do basically whatever they want, but they mostly do. And the J6 committee broke all the rules. So they can now do really whatever they want to do, including holding fake hearings that are not even adversarial. But this is Bragg again. He says that your committee is vague. It's shifting its legislative purpose. It's not sufficient. And you suggest that your request has a valid purpose because Congress can consider legislation. But you didn't identify any legislative purposes in your initial letter, and therefore we don't have to respond. And again, all of this is just, most of this is just copy paste rules stuff, which we've explained is just copy and pasting, really. We want application, we want analysis, we know what the rules are. Even if you were seriously considering the legislation and had the constitutional authority to enact it, which you don't, your request for information is unnecessary and unjustified. Congress has many sources from which it could seek other information. Same argument they tried with the J6 committee, but they wanted information from everybody. And they say the DA's office use of limited federal funds, bringing up the federal grant program. You can't take our money away because of these other programs. Here's what we need the money for, right? If you take our money, then you're going to be stopping violence against women. Don't take that money. If you take our money, you're going to be helping witness assistance programs go bankrupt. And we have another grant that comes from this grant. He says, finally, as you're no doubt aware, Alvin Bragg writes, former President Trump directed harsh invective against Bragg. As chairman, why don't you focus on that instead of the focus on our impartial grand jury? Instead, you and many of your colleagues have chosen to collaborate with Mr. Trump, unfounded allegations about our office. We urge you to refrain from these inflammatory accusations, withdraw your demand for information, and let the criminal justice process and proceed without any interference. If you do not withdraw your request, we reiterate our willingness to meet and confer with you or our staff about how we can honor your request without violating the integrity of our prosecution. We respectfully request you give us information you need. We have to comply with the secrecy rules. Respectfully submitted, Leslie Dubeck, General Counsel for Alvin Bragg's office. So this is going to get even spicier. I'm not sure Congress is going to like that response. Says, you don't have the authority to do anything. We'll see what they do in response. Let's take a look and see if Jim Jordan or the House Oversight Committee had anything to say about any of this. We'll take a look at the judiciary. We'll see if Jim Jordan has any new news for us on the Twitterverse. Here is his account. He said, is Alvin Bragg looking into Hunter Biden's art sales or business records in New York City? No, of course not. So it's going to be a very physically interesting thing that happens, right? Lefties are going to want to live in lefty cities so that they are protected by lefty prosecutors. Righties in lefty cities are going to want to get the hell out of there so that they're not prosecuted by lefty prosecutors. And we're going to see righty prosecutors, hopefully, running for office, specifically with the intention of prosecuting lefties because it worked for the left. We've got Alvin Bragg who did it. Letitia James did it. So if you have, if there are Republican DAs out there and there are people interested in running for Republican offices, I mean, you better prosecute them before they prosecute you. This is the new game we're playing here. They're going to prosecute you. Jordan says, Nancy Pelosi says President Trump has to, quote, prove his innocence. That's not how this country works. That's how Democrats think. And it's scary. Record crime, record grocery prices, record illegal immigration. But what are they focused on? Indicting President Trump. So they're talking other places about this. Jordan said, obviously, outrageous, which makes total sense. We have the Weaponization Committee. Not talking too much about this. We'll see what James Comer has to say. He's usually pretty communicative about these things. Matt Gaetz was also talking about it. And these are older clips. Let's see. All right. Twitter is being a little bit wonky today for whatever reason. Here is James Comer on with Fox and Friends.
The committee chairman. Pending indictment of Donald Trump.
I've said from day one, this is a political stunt. I mean, if this were the first case against Donald Trump, if this were the first time anyone had gone after Donald Trump, it might be different. But you look, the Democrats tried to impeach him before he ever even took office over Russian collusion. They spent 2 years looking into that. Then we all learned that was fake. That was all based on a fake document, the Steele dossier. Then they finally impeached him over Ukraine, when now what we're learning, the real quid pro quo wasn't Donald Trump. It was Joe Biden when he tried to hold up foreign aid when he was vice president in exchange for firing the federal prosecutor in Ukraine that was investigating the corruption from his son. Then the Democrats released all of his taxes for years and years and years, thinking that would create some type of legal backlash, and it didn't. Now the local DA gets him on federal campaign finance violations. It makes no sense, and it's another example why the American people have lost confidence in our judicial system.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the confidence in the judicial system is going to be suffering for a long time. And we talked about this on yesterday's show. The justice system works through legitimacy. People have to think it's legitimate. If people don't think it's legitimate, why would you engage with the system? You wouldn't. And here it's looking like it's hyper partisan, hyper political, which makes it feel very illegitimate. I found another interesting article. The Manhattan assistant DA nukes her Twitter account after the anti-Trump bias is exposed, posted at Zero Hedge by Tyler Durden, said less than 24 hours after the Gateway pundit exposed Manhattan assistant DA attorney Meg Reese's public hatred of Donald Trump on Twitter. Reese, who's been accused of masterminding the case against Donald Trump, locked and then deleted her account. Here you see this was captured before she left and went bye-bye. Chief Assistant Manhattan from the DA's office says views are my own. These tweets were protected, and then this account doesn't exist. The Gateway pundit picked this up, says that on Thursday morning, Reese liked several anti-Trump tweets, exposing her absolute bias against the man her office is about to indict. Ezra Klein was posting this. I've always believed Trump lives in a fortress of whatever. And then she apparently liked some of these because if you went to her account, Megan Reese, you could see likes here, and then you see what she liked. So she liked this one. I always believed Trump lived in a fortress of narcissism. She liked this one. Make America intelligent again. Dump Trump. Our votes did this. She liked that one. She liked this one from Elizabeth Warren. We need to send Donald Trump packing, but we can't stop there. We need to boot his Republican enablers out of office at every level of government. Like that one. He's gone. It's now time for us to drive out what he represents. She liked that one too. That's a photo of her. I told you weeks ago, says John, she was driving all of this. Now, recently, Hillary Clinton was allowed to pay a fine. Talk about double standards. She was somebody who was excused for her misdeeds, but Trump is not. And they were sharing more from her about the different things that she was involved in. So her political bias is everywhere because this is a political prosecution. Some other hack that we know well here called James Comey used to be the director of the FBI. And if you had any doubts about whether the FBI was a partisan, corrupt hack organization at all, this is a good reminder. James Comey posted this March 30th, 7:51, says, "It's been a good day." The live stream is now back over locals for some reason. I don't know why that didn't start. But here you can see James Comey says it's been a good day. And that tells you everything you need to know about him. So that's mostly what we've got on the Trump stuff. It feels like we've caught most of the headlines. Let's see if there's anything else in some other locations that we haven't checked yet. Anything new popping through. Other headlines from CNN, which usually also gets the leak. Trump caught off guard. Lawyer says Trump's not going to accept a plea deal. And Secret Service is meeting with officials today. So we got a couple stories. President Trump will not take a plea deal in this case. It's not going to happen, Joe Tecopina said. Trying to see if we had the clip of that, but we don't. So he says, I don't know if it's going to make it to trial. We have substantial legal challenges that we have to get in front of before we get to that point. Tocopina says, when asked if he expects to take the case to trial, says Trump will absolutely voluntarily surrender to Manhattan law enforcement, the defense attorney said. He's not going to hole up in Mar-a-Lago. Logistics are currently being worked out. Trump attorney Jim Trusty said Friday he expects the former president's legal team will file motions to dismiss his indictment before a trial could even get underway. He says, I would think in very short order, you'll see a motion to dismiss or several motions to dismiss, talking about this kind of impossible theory of stacking federal crime into a state misdemeanor. Statute of limitations issues, very importantly, the intent to defraud, says that's an element of these false record-keeping charges. That's just not present here, Trusty told CNN. The lawyer said he did not know about the exact timing. There isn't even a case number yet, but it will soon. I think this will be something you can expect in the days or weeks, not weeks or months. He will not be put in handcuffs. Is the Secret Service going to even allow that? To put him in handcuffs? I don't know. Responding to CNN reporting that Trump has been charged with more than 30 counts, Tacopina said he did not know the nature of the charges. Says if it's correct, it means if there's 30 charges or 30 plus, it means they took each transaction, each check, each payment, and they made a separate charge. Charges will probably be unsealed on Tuesday, when Trump is actually indicted and shows up there. There was a clip from Joe Biden. He's not commenting on this at all. Here's what he said.
I have no comment on that.
Mr. President,
Are you worried this will further divide our country, the indictment? I have no comment on that.
Mr. President.
Possible protest in the wake of the indictment?
No, I'm not going to talk about Trump's indictment.
I'm not going to talk about it.
Do you believe about
Probably a good call, because as soon as the Republicans are in charge, he's probably going to get indicted too. They're going to take over at some point in the future, and hopefully it's fair game and he gets indicted for all of his misdeeds. Because if Trump's going to get indicted, everybody else should be indicted as well. It's just an indictment free for all. So that is, my friends, the latest on the Trump update. Appearing in court. We'll see what else continues to percolate. Looks like they're going to be meeting to arrange the details, but self-surrender date on Tuesday, of course, we'll continue to cover. Let's take a look and say hello to the chat before we wrap up and go over to our watchingthewatchers.locals.com after party. And if you're here and if you haven't gotten your Field of Greens yet, my friends, well, you definitely should. You know, our friends at Field of Greens, they have this delicious product called Field of Greens. And at fieldofgreens.com, you can get yours. I take mine. Let me tell you what's in it. This one has caffeine in it, but it also has an antioxidant blend. It's got an organic greens blend. It's got a prebiotic fiber blend, an organic energy blend, a metabolic blend, all in here. And it's fieldofgreens.com. You can save 15% with code Robert. You know, our food, oftentimes, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't eat enough vegetables or fruit. I'll just say that. But even if I did, right? Even if I did, is the quality of the fruits, is the quality of the food, is the quality of the stuff we eating actually that good? I don't think so. That's just why I take supplements pretty regularly, and they improve my life because I don't trust the quality of our food. And this helps with that process. Daily servings of fruits and vegetables tastes really good going down. It goes great in water. I actually like it in sparkling water, a little bit weird, but it kind of froths it up a little bit and almost turns it into a little bit of a shake. It tastes good. Your mom told you to eat your vegetables. Now you can get this for your mom and tell your mom to eat your vegetables. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Use code Robert when you get there. Save 15% at checkout. The vegetables want to be eaten. Your mother's going to love it. Your father's going to love it. Tell them you want them to be alive a lot longer, you know, and they got to be healthy and start eating their vegetables, and they'll appreciate it. And so that, my friends, is going to be it for us. We are going to go over to our watchingthewatchers.locals.com after party today. We will not be doing a live stream tonight because I think we covered most of everything we were going to hit. I actually thought we were going to have a full day of Proud Boys Trial Day 2, and that didn't come to fruition. So we will leave it there. Let's jump into the chat and see what else you guys have to say before we wrap it up on this lovely, lovely Friday. And if you are a YouTube member, and hey, by the way, I think I saw Dolphin Fan. Thank you very much to Dolphin Fan, who invited, was that 20 members who came in, Dolphin Fan? You're the best. Thank you so much for doing that. And so if you are a new member who got invited over courtesy of our friend Dolphin Fan, don't forget to grab the Telegram chat, which is in the community post section on YouTube. If you're a YouTube member, it's a members only post over there. Grab the Telegram chat because we are going over there for a little bit longer to hang out with locals and to hang out with our YouTube members and all of our other supporters. And so we will leave it there. The address is watchingthewatchers.locals.com if you'd like to join us. Don't forget to get your Field of Greens at fieldofgreens.com. Check out with code Robert. And also want to shout out my former law firm, our friends over at the R&R Law Group. You can find them at rrlawaz.com. Although I'm no longer there, they're still helping good people charged with crimes. And if you know anybody in the state of Arizona, they can help at 480-787-0394. Also want to say thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us, our friends Vienticus Prime, K-Bean, Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Geomancy, Zach Nichols, and John Allen. Also, shout outs to our meme smiths, Sleepy Dogly, and Geegum Geegum. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And so we're not done. We're going to go hang out with our members for some more exclusive debrief behind the scenes stuff. We're going to go hang out there. I'd love to see you there. But if not, we will be back here tomorrow to do this all. On Monday to do this all again. Because it's Friday, baby. We've got a full weekend ahead. We'll come back. We'll see if there's anything new breaking with Trump. You know, we'll probably have to hit that over the weekend if something happens. But should be pretty quiet. Monday and Tuesday, however, are going to be bangers. And so we'll be back here. I hope to see you join us so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful weekend, my friends. Sleep very well, unplug from politics. We'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye, everybody.